Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will update the House on the situation in Ukraine. This morning, Russian missiles again struck Kyiv and other cities, destroying critical national infrastructure and depriving Ukrainians of water and electricity. Earlier today, I spoke to our ambassador in Kyiv, and I heard again of the extraordinary resilience of Ukraine's people in the face of Russian aggression. At the weekend, Russia suspended its participation in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which has allowed the exportation of 100,000 tons of food every day, including to some of the least developed countries in the world. Putin is exacting vengeance for his military failures on the civilians of Ukraine by cutting off their power and their water supply, and on the poorest people in the world by threatening their food supplies. Over 60% of the wheat exported under the Black Sea Grain Initiative has gone to low and middle income countries, including Ethiopia, Yemen, and Afghanistan. It would be unconscionable for those lands to be made to suffer because of Putin's setbacks on the battlefield in Ukraine. I urge Russia to stop impeding this vital initiative that is helping feed the hungry across the world and agree to its extension. Meanwhile, Russia's suicide drones and cruise missiles are killing Ukrainian civilians, obliterating their homes, and even destroying a children's playground. A third of the country's power stations were put out of operation in a single week. None of this achieves any military purpose. Putin's only aim is to spread terror and to deprive Ukrainian families of shelter, light, and heat as harsh winter approaches. I'm sure the House will join me in condemning his breaches of international humanitarian law. I'm sure every honourable and right honourable member will share my conviction that Putin will never break the spirit of the Ukrainian people. And this House will share my incredulity at the glaring contradictions in Putin's thinking. He claims that Ukraine is part of Russia and that Ukrainians are Russians. But at the same time, he calls them Nazis who must be bombed without mercy. When he launched his invasion, he convinced himself that Russian forces would be welcomed in Kyiv, and they would either support him or be too craven to stand in his way. He could not have been more wrong. The last 8 months has shown the scale of his miscalculation. They have shown the barbarity of his onslaught, including the mass rape committed by Russian soldiers in Ukraine. The UK's campaign to prevent sexual violence in conflict is more urgent now than ever, and I will host a conference on this vital subject next month. And now, the Kremlin is resorting to peddling false claims, churning out invented stories that say more about the fractures within the Russian government than they do about us. It is also reprehensible that Iran should have supplied Russia with the Shahed drones that are bringing destruction to Ukraine in violation of UN Resolution 2231. On the 20th of October, the government imposed sanctions on 3 Iranian commanders involved in supplying weaponry to Russia, along with the company that manufactures Shahed drones. Earlier, Putin announced on the 30th of September that Russia had annexed 4 regions of Ukraine spanning 40,000 square miles, the biggest land grab in Europe since the Second World War. Once again, this exposes his self-delusion. Putin has declared the annexation of territory he has not captured. And what he had managed to seize, he is in the process of losing. On the 12th of October, 143 countries, 3/4 of the entire membership of the United Nations, voted in the General Assembly to condemn the annexation. Russia had just 4 supporters: Syria, Belarus, Nicaragua, North Korea. And when those regimes are your only friends, you really know that you are isolated. When 141 countries denounced Putin's invasion back in March, some speculated that that was the ceiling of the international support for Ukraine. The latest vote showed even more nations are now ready to condemn Russia. But Putin still thinks that by forcing up food and energy prices, we will lose our resolve. Our task is to prove him wrong. We will not waver in our support for Ukraine's right to self-defense. I delivered that emphatic message when I spoke to my Ukrainian counterpart on Tuesday, and my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, said the same to President Zelensky when they spoke on the phone, the first foreign leader that he called upon his appointment as Prime Minister. On Thursday, I will attend a meeting of G7 foreign ministers in Germany, where I will send a unified signal of our shared determination. This year, Britain gave Ukraine £2.3 billion worth of military support, more than any country in the world apart from the United States of America. We will provide Ukraine with more support to repair its energy infrastructure, and we have committed to £220 million of humanitarian aid. The House will have noted Putin's irresponsible talk about nuclear weapons and an absurd claim that Ukraine plans to detonate a radiological dirty bomb on its own territory. No other country is talking about nuclear use. No country is threatening Russia or threatening President Putin. He should be clear that for the UK and our allies, any use at all of nuclear weapons would fundamentally change the nature of this conflict. There would be severe consequences for Russia. And how counterproductive would it be for Russia to break a norm against nuclear use that has held since 1945 and has underpinned global security? Nothing will alter our conviction that the Ukrainians have a right to live in peace and freedom in their own lands. If Putin were to succeed, every expansionist tyrant would be emboldened to do their worst, and no country would be safe. That is why we stand and will continue to stand alongside our Ukrainian friends until the day comes, as it inevitably will, that they prevail. Mr. Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy.
Mr. Speaker, the war in Ukraine is at a critical new stage. Increasing missile and drone attacks, the senseless withdrawal from the grain export deal that would lead to increasing hunger around the world, and as we enter the winter months, Putin's rhetoric is becoming increasingly irresponsible, including his references to nuclear weapons and dangerous fabrications around a so-called dirty bomb. And I support the Foreign Secretary's words on that matter. This is a sign of Putin's desperation, but this does not mean an end is near. This will be a long and protracted conflict. This morning, more than 50 missiles were launched by Russian forces against Ukrainian energy and water systems over the course of just a few hours. This isn't an isolated attack, but a deliberate and callous Russian strategy to target civilian infrastructure ahead of the winter. Mr. Speaker, some estimates claim almost a third of Ukraine's power stations and other energy facilities have been hit, and 80% of Kyiv has been left without water after these latest attacks. The Foreign Secretary mentioned his discussions with our ambassador on the ground. I am sure the whole House are grateful to the embassy team for their continuing work in very challenging conditions. Can the Foreign Secretary set out today how many electricity generators the UK has already sent to Ukraine and how we will strengthen Ukraine's energy supply at this time? Some of these attacks have been conducted using Iranian-supplied drones. We welcome the sanctions already announced against the Iranian regime. What further measures is the government considering to prevent Iran's material support to Russia's invasion? Over the past week, we've also seen Russia engage in baseless, ridiculous accusations that the United Kingdom was involved in the destruction of part of the Nord Stream pipeline. What is the government doing to tackle the dangerous disinformation being spread by Putin? Mr. Speaker, the UN-backed agreement on grain exports has been vital in reducing global food prices. President Putin's unjustifiable decision to pull out of this deal will have catastrophic consequences. It comes at a time when many countries are already food insecure, including Somalia, where an imminent famine is feared. This decision should be seen by the world for what it is: the Kremlin's cruel and transparent use of hunger to blackmail. Any spike in world food prices will be the responsibility of the Russian government. An agreement must be restored. Can the Foreign Secretary outline what conversations he's had with counterparts, including Turkey, on the potential for restoring grain flows? And what steps the UK is considering to mitigate the worst consequences for the developing world if those efforts fail? Since the end of August, Ukraine has been conducting successful counter-offensive operations in the south and east of Ukraine, liberating around 12,000 square kilometres. But Russia continues to attempt to make progress in the Donbass and Bakhmut. Winter is coming. Any counter-offensives could soon slow, and an operational stalemate is likely for the next couple of months. It is day 249 of the invasion, and the Ministry of Defence has not even signed a contract to replenish the NLAW's anti-tank missiles, which has been vital to the Ukrainian army. Will the government restock and resupply Ukraine and the British Armed Forces with essential military assistance? Over 20 NATO countries have now rebooted defence plans since the invasion began, but the UK government has still not done so. Will he update the integrated review of the foreign and defence policy and continue what was indicated by the last Prime Minister? Now we are on our third in just 3 months. Mr. Speaker, last month the UN, at the United Nations, more countries than ever voted to condemn Russia in its illegal and unjustifiable annexation of Ukrainian territory. The world saw through the sham referendums and recognised Russia's actions as a flagrant violation of the UN Charter. We must sustain and grow the diplomatic coalition against Putin, because the outcome of this war will depend on who is more resilient: Putin's Russia or Ukraine and its supporters in the West and beyond. Labour is clear. We won't let our support for Ukraine falter. Our duty now is to make sure Ukraine wins. This means providing the diplomatic and military support required, but also moving beyond ad hoc announcements and laying out a long-term strategy for military, economic and diplomatic assistance through 2023 and beyond. We have to reinforce the message to Putin: continuing this barbaric war will make it worse, not better, for Russia.
Foreign Secretary.
I thank my opposite number, the Right Honourable Gentleman, for the points that he's made, and echoing from his benches the support for the Ukrainian people and their attempts to, or their work to eject Russia from their homelands. I think it is noticed that whilst we often disagree, sometime on detail, our collective response is to support the Ukrainian people. That will be noted, and I think they will be incredibly grateful for that. He raises a number of points which I will attempt to cover in my response. In terms of the energy needs of the Ukrainian people going into the winter, the UK has pledged £100 million to support Ukraine's energy security and to reform, and £74 million in fiscal grants to support Ukraine through the World Bank. With his specific question about the number of generators, I will seek to get more details of that and share those with him at an appropriate point in the future. With regard to Iran, he notes the fact that we have already sanctioned a number of people, as I made in the point I made in my statement. He will know that we do not discuss future sanctions designations, but I can assure him that we will be keeping a close eye on Iran and indeed any other country's actions in terms of providing arms for Russia, and we will take appropriate actions to dissuade them from doing so and to react if they do. He is absolutely right to highlight the situation with regard to disinformation. We have seen increasingly desperate statements coming out of the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Kremlin. Those claims are designed to distract the Russian people and indeed the wider international community from the truth. And the truth is that the Ukrainians are pushing Russian forces back on the battlefield. We must not be distracted from that truth, and he is absolutely right that we must work with our international allies to make sure that Russia's disinformation campaign does not influence global support for the Ukrainian people. He also mentioned grain exports, and I've spoken with my Turkish counterparts in the past, expressing our gratitude for the work that they've done securing that grain export deal. And we've also reinforced the need for that to be extended and for Russia to lift the pause on their engagement with that. This is about ensuring that the global poor, those people who are already suffering from hunger, are not drawn into a conflict not of their choosing. And we must not let Vladimir Putin use global hunger as leverage to undermine support for the Ukrainians in the defence of their homelands. He asks about the supply of anti-tank missile systems. We are committed to matching our support next year as we have done for this year. We will ensure that the Ukrainians are supplied with the arms most relevant to the needs at the time. Obviously, in the initial conflict, the initial phases of the conflict, those NLAWs and other anti-tank missile systems were incredibly important to them. What we're now seeing as the battlefield has evolved, ground-to-air missile systems and air-to-air missile systems have increased in importance. We'll make sure that our support to Ukraine matches their needs, but we'll also ensure that we don't denude our own armed forces of requirements, and action has been taken to stimulate the supply chain for critical military equipment. We will always ensure that we adapt to the circumstances on the ground, on the battlefield, and also ensure that we don't, as I say, denude ourselves of our ability to defend this country as well as our friends and allies.
Yeah, we'll come to the Chair of the Select Committee, Alicia Kearns.
Speaker, over the next month, war on the ground will be most difficult to Putin to wage, and therefore he is weaponising famine, information, sexual violence, and even Ukraine's children. So can my right honourable friend tell me what conversations he is having with abstentionist countries who are most likely to suffer from famine in order to that they encourage Russia to return to the Black Sea grain deal? On the kidnapping of Ukrainian children, which is a form of genocide, there appears to be no meaningful international action taking place, so can he reassure us on that front? And finally, Bellingcat have identified 33 individuals whose sole job is to target civilian infrastructure within Ukraine. Can he reassure us that sanctions are being considered against these individuals whose sole job is to terrorise the Ukrainian public?
Foreign Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend for the points that she has made, and she is absolutely right that it is important that we engage with those countries that have thus far abstained in votes at the United Nations to remind them that Russia's attack on Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, is not just a European issue. It is about the UN Charter. It is about territorial integrity. It is about the rule of law. And that any and all countries that value those things should show solidarity in their condemnation of Russia's involvement. She asks about individuals that may be involved in targeting of civilian infrastructure. She will understand, of course, that we don't discuss intelligence matters, and also we don't go into detail about future sanctions designations. But I can assure her that we think very carefully, we act very carefully in terms of our response to deter, but also to respond to those the issues that she has raised. And we will, of course, keep a very, very close eye on the actions of Russia, where they are targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure as well as critical national infrastructure, and that will always be an important part of the work we do.
SNP spokesperson Anam Kesa.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Renewed cruise missile attacks on Ukrainian cities and civilian infrastructure this morning are appalling, but tragically now part of Putin's almost daily arsenal. By attacking residential areas, electricity infrastructure and water supplies, Putin is ordering his troops to carry out war crimes on a daily basis. And then, as an international community, we cannot allow this to happen. So can the Foreign Secretary give detail about what is being done to assist diplomats on the ground in Ukraine, including UK diplomats, document war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by the Russian military, so that these incidents can be escalated to the ICC. As this war morphs into a protracted conflict, the creep of Ukraine fatigue into the UK public is an increasing danger. So the statistics published recently show that in the midst of the hiked UK energy prices, the UK public support for continuing economic sanctions against Russia has fallen from 73% in March to 41% in this month. So what is the UK government doing to mitigate against Ukraine fatigue? Will the UK government commit to a public campaign to remind the electorate A, why we're supporting Ukraine, and B, what they can continue doing to help? Food security is also of grave concern. 12 grain export ships have left Ukraine today, despite Russia pulling out of the Turkey-UN brokered grain deal. So the need for reliable grain supplies, Madam Deputy Speaker, particularly in regions such as the Horn of Africa, is acute. As the aggressor in this war, Russia has already made itself an international pariah, and it cannot continue to do so by actively restricting food supplies to famine and drought-affected regions of the world. So can the Foreign Secretary outline the steps that the FCDO is taking alongside international allies to get Russian officials back into talks for this deal? And will he also confirm whether UK officials are assisting Turkish counterparts in their efforts in securing this grain deal? And finally, can he give the House details about the sanctions on Iran, given their supplies of drones to Russia against Ukraine have targeted civilians? And he said in an earlier answer to the Shadow Foreign Secretary that he, quite rightly, won't give detail, but can he commit to giving regular updates to the House?
Yeah. Secretary of State.
Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Lady raises a number of very important points with regard to Iran. I can assure her that we constantly review our sanctions policy, our sanctions designations, and we will ensure that we respond to any further breaches of the UN Security Council resolution about supplying arms to this conflict. She makes an incredibly important point about the documentation of war crimes. I had meetings with Karim Khan, head of the International Criminal Court, the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, with regard to documentation of war crimes to ensure that those perpetrators know that they will be held to account for the actions that they have taken. And with regard to the UK's support for Ukraine, we recognise that this winter will be tough for people here in the UK. Our energy support package is designed to alleviate some of that pressure, but we recognise it will be tough. But I think the British people instinctively understand that if we slip back from our support of the Ukrainians in this incredibly difficult time for them, the costs globally will be huge. The cost in lives, the cost in food supplies, the cost in energy supplies, and the costs to families here in the UK. So as difficult as it is, and I recognise that it is difficult for everyone at this time, it is essential that we continue our support for Ukraine, because the costs of inaction will be so much higher.
Vicky Ford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Tens of thousands of people
have been affected by this war directly, and thousands of Ukrainian innocent civilians have lost their lives. It's absolutely right that the UK remains steadfast and unwavering in our support for the people of Ukraine. We will be with them as long as they need us. But globally, as my right honourable Foreign Secretary said, many millions of the world's most vulnerable have been pushed deeper into hunger and starvation and even famine by Putin's war on food. I was very pleased to hear my right honourable friends reminding of the fact that the majority of the grain that has come out of the Black Sea has gone to low and middle income countries, because Russian misinformation is trying to tell the world the opposite. So can I urge my right honourable friend and his team of excellent ministers to use all diplomatic tools to try and get that Black Sea grain initiative not only back up and running, but also extended, and to continue to call out the Russian misinformation on this point. Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to put on record my thanks to my right honourable friend for the work that she did in her time at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and the huge energy that she brought to the role. She's absolutely right that we are witnessing the perverse situation where Vladimir Putin is trying to impose even greater hunger on people who are already suffering food insecurity and, in some instances, famine. It is absolutely wrong that he does so, and we call upon Russia to resume the Black Sea grain deal and to extend it. It is deeply, deeply wrong that the world's poor are forced to suffer even more because Russia has been and is being unsuccessful on the battlefield, and I can assure her that we will continue working with Turkey and others to get that deal back in place. Yeah.
Chris Bryant, you said.
Chris Bryant.
Thank you. One of the most depressing things, upsetting things I've seen in the last few days is Russian conscripts in floods of tears saying, I don't want to be cannon fodder, I'm just going to be cannon fodder. So this is a crime against Russian people as well. Yeah. But can I just ask about the sanction regime in the UK? Because it does seem a bit of an own goal and counterproductive. If significant people who are being sanctioned by the UK are allowed to have £60,000 a month, £1.5 million to spend on luxurious lifestyles here. And can you just update us on what's happened to the £3.5 billion from Abramovich's sale of Chelsea, which was meant to be going already by now to the reconstruction of Ukraine?
Yeah. Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, I can assure the honourable gentleman that we will continue to work with our international counterparts to make sure that our sanctions are effective as they can be, and to continue putting pressure on those people who are funding Russia's illegal and unprovoked war in Ukraine. I will seek to get further details on the specific points that he has raised with regard to sanctions. He's absolutely right. He is absolutely right that in addition to the terrible suffering that Ukrainians are experiencing because of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, Russians are also suffering. There are mothers who thought their sons were going to a training exercise who now have found out that those soldiers have been killed on the battlefield. Putin has blood on his hands, Ukrainian blood, Russian blood. It is down to him and almost no one else.
Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the emphasis that Putin is putting on attacking infrastructure, and without in any way asking him to be specific, will the Foreign Secretary reassure the House that enough attention is being paid by our armed forces to protecting undersea pipelines and internet cables, and will he have a quiet word between now and the autumn statement with the Prime Minister and the Chancellor to say that now is not the right time to be rowing back from a long overdue promise to increase expenditure on defence?
Secretary of State.
My right honourable friend tempts me to go beyond my brief at the dispatch box. All I can say is that I always listen to his advice carefully, and I have no doubt that the Secretary of State for Defence, the Prime Minister and indeed the Chancellor will have listened very, very carefully to the points he put forward.
Tony Lloyd.
The Minister, the Foreign Secretary, has quite rightly made the point about protection of the infrastructure in Ukraine, because we know the campaign at the moment is to weaken the morale of the Ukrainian people. Is he satisfied, though, in that context, that there is the international coordination so that we're making sure that the British efforts from other international partners are such that it does deliver the support that Ukraine needs at the moment?
Secretary of State.
He makes a very important point. Vladimir Putin clearly went into this conflict believing that the pressure he exerted on Ukraine would create fragmentation in the Ukrainian political system. It did not. He was expecting it would create tension in NATO. It did not. He thought it would split up the EU. It did not. He thought it would break up the G7. It did not. At every single strategic aim, he has failed. Indeed, he is now looking at a stronger and larger NATO because of his actions. I can assure the honourable gentleman that the international community, if anything, has been brought closer together in terms of our coordinated response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and in terms of our support to the Ukrainians themselves.
Sir John Whittingdale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can my right honourable friend make clear that if indeed any attack did take place on the Russian Black Sea Fleet, the UK had absolutely no involvement in it? And can he confirm that despite the withdrawal of Russia from the agreement, nevertheless ships have left Odessa today bearing grain, and can he say whether or not he expects that to continue?
Secretary of State.
My right honourable friend makes a very, very important point about the importance of the Black Sea grain deal. That is helping feed people that need the international support now more than ever. With regard to the claims that are being made from the Kremlin and the Russian Ministry of Defence, they are becoming increasingly detached from reality. And as I've said, they are designed to distract the Russian people from the reality of the Russian failures on the battlefield. We will continue to shine a light on those failures, and we will continue to support Ukraine in defending itself against that aggression.
Hilary Benn.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. In announcing it was pulling out of the deal, Russia said it would be risky for Ukraine to continue to seek to export grain using the Black Sea. Given that the only possible risk to ships comes from Russia itself, and further to the question just put by the Right Honourable Member for Malden, if ships are moving out of Odessa, there are reports that the United Nations, Turkey and Ukraine have reached some agreement about ships that are currently in Turkish waters. Does he think there's any prospect that President Putin's bluff on this will be called? Ships will continue to be inspected by the other parties to the agreement, and they can carry on helping to feed the world.
Secretary of State.
I think the point he made about where the only credible threat to international shipping would come from is an important one. And I think the world would see, if those grain ships were attacked or if they were prevented from exporting that grain, the world would see who was ultimately responsible for imposing even further hunger on those people in the world, those people in the global south, those people already suffering from food insecurity and famine. The world would see who was truly to blame for imposing greater hardship on those people who are already suffering.
Tobias Elwood.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I absolutely endorse the support that this government, the front bench, is giving to Ukraine. But we've entered a darker chapter as Putin is up against the wall. He's resorting to non-conventional means. Can I suggest that our support, therefore, needs to move, bearing in mind the escalatory ladder, from the battlefield to supporting Ukraine's infrastructure? And to that end, Odessa, that critical port, those grain ships are not getting out to the scale that we need to feed the world. Could I suggest that he goes to the United Nations General Assembly, secures a resolution to create a safe haven around that port so Britain can lead the international community in maritime flotilla to support the grain ships departing and entering that port?
Secretary of State.
My right honourable friend makes an incredibly important point about the significance of grain exports from the Black Sea. I've listened to his proposal. I think that what we need to do is see Russia immediately reverse its pause on its involvement in Black Sea exports, and we will look at any options which increase the flow of food to the global south, to the people who need that food more than ever. Of course, I will take his suggestion seriously, but ultimately we want to do whatever we can do to increase the grain exports immediately.
Gavin Robinson.
Speaker, and can I thank the Foreign Secretary for his statement and in recognising the answers he has given already about sanctions for the IRGC, encourage him to recognise that across the House there will be support for further action should he deem it fit to take, and I would encourage him to do so. In respect of the United Nations, I think it is encouraging to hear that the UN are standing by ship movements today, but could he elaborate from a diplomatic perspective what avenues are available through the United Nations to increase international support, bearing in mind the veto that Russia continues to have in the P5?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, he makes an incredibly important point about the inbuilt limitations of the United Nations because of Russia's abuse of its veto. The United Nations is an incredibly important institution, and as I say, the world, 143 countries voting in condemnation of annexation, 141 voting in condemnation of the attack. We know the United Nations is still an incredibly important institution, but Russia's veto limits to some extent what it can do. So therefore we will continue to work with the UN, with Turkey and others to maximise the grain exports through the Black Sea so we can alleviate the hunger felt by the global south.
James Sunderland.
Speaker, thank you. I'm sure that every person in the House today will share my own horror and revulsion at the continual targeting by Russia of non-combatants and also lobbing of missiles into civilian areas. Noting the limitations indirectly posed by Article 5, could the Foreign Secretary please confirm whether any consideration has been given to the deployment of an Iron Dome or Patriot-type system to protect the Ukrainians?
Secretary of State.
The UK and our international allies have provided Ukraine with both ground-to-air defence systems and also air-to-air defence systems. We will continue to assess their defence needs and adjust our support to them accordingly.
Geraint Davies.
Yes, Madam Deputy Speaker, President Zelensky at the Council of Europe, which I'm a member of, suggested that they only had about 10% of the air defences needed to respond to the current onslaught. And a lot of that onslaught is, of course, from Iranian drones. So given that Iran is in a condition of social unrest, what efforts is the UK government making to ensure that people in Iran know that the focus of their government is to send weapons of mass destruction against innocent people rather than feeding them bread and giving them human rights in order to choke off over time the supply of these deadly weapons?
He makes a very good point. We will continue to take action which discourage the supply of weapons to Russia that will be used, that might be used in Ukraine, and we will keep under constant review our sanctions packages to choke off the supply of weapons like drones. We'll keep that under review.
Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend has set out what he is doing to urge allies and other countries to provide extra support for Ukraine, but specifically when it comes to the training of those brave Ukrainians are fighting in their homelands. I wondered if he could set out what more we can do, perhaps working with our NATO allies in this regard.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very proud that I'm joined on the front bench by my right honourable and gallant friend from the Ministry of Defence. I'm incredibly proud of the work that the British Armed Forces have done training members of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. We are being joined by an increasingly large number of international allies who are doing likewise. I think it is being demonstrated on the battlefield that it's not just the equipment that we have supplied or the inherent resolve of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, but also the technical improvement that we have helped train with the Ukrainian Armed Forces that has been decisive, and I have no doubt that that will continue.
Leila Moran.
Deputy Speaker, may I thank the Foreign Secretary for his words and particularly agree with when he says we will not allow Putin to use hunger as global leverage, because doing so is barbaric and frankly condemns thousands more to death than he's already killed. But given that backdrop, does he also share my concern that we as a country are now only spending 0.3% of gross national income on aid across the world? We found this out this weekend. We have all here campaigned on manifestos of 0.7%. Surely the answer now is for us to step up again and ensure that what Putin wants to do cannot be done, because we will be there to ensure that his barbaric act won't have the effect he hopes.
I don't agree with the figures that the Honourable Lady has used, but the broader fact is that we continue to support countries in the global south, poor countries around the world. We continue to support them directly, but also through ensuring that those grain exports continue. We are helping them through the Black Sea grain initiative, and I can assure her and the House that we will continue to do both. It is incredibly important that we re-establish the principle that powerful neighbours cannot invade another country with impunity, that territorial integrity must be preserved, because it will be the very people that she makes reference to in other parts of the world that would suffer if the message is sent to potential aggressors that we will stand idly by and watch them brutalise their neighbours. We will never do that.
Order. Just before we proceed, a great many people still wish to participate in this statement, and we've already been underway for 42 minutes. There's a lot of other business that the House has to transact for the rest of today. So can I make a plea for short questions, which would then allow the Foreign Secretary to give short answers? John Hull.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will my right honourable friend join me in congratulating President Zelensky for engaging directly with parliamentarians such as myself at the Council of Europe? And he spoke openly about his needs there, and it was an answer to a question of mine that he said that the need for missile defence systems was, he had only 10% of what he needed.
Well, I do congratulate President Zelensky on his engagement with partners both bilaterally and multilaterally, and I would like to put on record my thanks for the work that my honourable friend does in ensuring that these issues are brought to the attention, and the huge amount of effort that he puts into the UK's position on the Council of Europe.
Alison McGovern.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Foreign Secretary's statement mentioned Syria as one of those countries at the United Nations that has given Russia comfort. But it's not Syrian civilians that have taken that stance. In fact, Madam Deputy Speaker, they are the very people who know, equally to anyone in this world, of Putin's violence. So can I ask the Foreign Secretary what he's doing at the United Nations or elsewhere to widen the consensus that all civilians in our world deserve protection from Putin's violence, including Syrian civilians?
Madam Deputy Speaker, she makes an incredibly important point. We have seen the leadership in Russia, Putin bringing pain and harm on Russian people. We have seen Assad bringing pain and harm on Syrian people. We know it is not done in their name, it is not done with their say-so. And she's absolutely right that civilians around the world are suffering because of the poor decisions of their brutal leadership, both in Moscow and in Syria.
Richard Drax.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I welcome my honourable friend to his place? I'm delighted to see he's still there. Understandably, we hear an awful lot about what we and what the Americans are giving in direct help to the Ukrainians. Can you clarify to the House, exactly what other NATO countries like Germany and France are actually giving to Ukraine and the scale of it?
Madam Deputy Speaker, time prevents me from going into the level of detail that my honourable friend has asked for, but I would reassure the House that whilst the UK is second only to the United States of America in direct military support, other countries around the world, around Europe, are very, very much providing support to Ukraine and have responded with alacrity at the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Both through NATO and through various institutions, including the G7, we have become closer as allies, and we will, I'm sure, continue to stand in solidarity in our support for the Ukrainians in the defence of their homeland.
Mohammed Yassin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents, Georgie, like many refugees supported by the Homes for Ukraine scheme, arrived in the UK with their Ukrainian cars, and they hope to return home as soon as it is safe to do so. Will the Foreign Secretary speak to his colleagues in the DFT about the urgently dropping or extending the requirements to exchange Ukrainian number plates for UK plates beyond the current 6 months period, which is causing unnecessary stress to those affected?
I'll take a note of the point that he has made, and I'm sure my colleagues in Transport will have done so also.
Andrew Selous.
Will the Foreign Secretary impose sanctions on Ivan Ryabov, a Russian security official who was shown to have abused Russian females protesting against Ukraine? And would this not show that our sanctions reaches even junior Russians who abuse Russian protesters like that?
I'm sure he will be unsurprised to say that we don't discuss future sanctions designations, but the House and my department will have heard the name that he has mentioned and the circumstances under which that sanction might be considered.
Kevin Jones.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Foreign Secretary for his statement. He mentioned in his statement NLaw, which has been tremendously effective in Ukraine, but it is also a fact that we haven't yet put in a contract for renewal in just the stocks for the UK Army, but also for any future use in Ukraine. Why is that? When will the contract be signed?
My understanding is that we've given letters of comfort to the supply chain of NLaws, which will stimulate the future production, and that we will, of course, always take actions that ensures that not only we are able to support the Ukrainians in the defence of their homeland, but we do so without detrimenting our ability to defend ourselves.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Speaking, the UN estimates suggest that the Black Sea Grain Initiative has indirectly saved 100 million people from falling into extreme poverty. So when he goes to the G7 meeting on Thursday, will he be raising this particular topic and looking at what support we can put into the key partner of Turkey to try and make sure that Russia release their suspension of this deal?
I speak with my Turkish counterpart regularly on this issue and others. They are, I know, very committed to ensure that those grain exports continue, and I will continue discussing with them how we can ensure that continues beyond the current lifestyle of this agreement.
Alison Thulis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Russian missile strikes in Kyiv have reportedly left much of the city without a water supply. So can I ask the Secretary of State what more his government is doing to ensure Ukrainians get access to clean water, both through expertise and funding?
The Honourable Lady makes an incredibly important point about the ability to repair infrastructure. As I say, I spoke to His Majesty's Ambassador in Kiev just this afternoon about the speed with which Ukrainian municipal workers are repairing that infrastructure, remarkable speed with which they do that. Actually, I might take this opportunity to respond to a specific question that the Right Honourable gentleman made about humanitarian assistance, including 856 portable generators to support power for essential public services in Ukraine.
Robert Coates.
Speaker. I'd like to pay tribute to the extraordinary achievements of the Ukrainian Air Force in the circumstances that they are in. Could the Foreign Secretary assure me that he will be given consideration to what support he can give them so the aerial dimension is not forgotten?
I can assure him we will consider that. I'm very proud of the fact that we've supplied a number of AMRAAM missiles specifically to help defend themselves, the Ukrainians defend themselves against attacks from the air. We'll keep that constantly under review.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In a statement issued in March, the government said it had created an electricity network support task force for Ukraine, which brought together UK commercial suppliers and the Energy Networks Association. The then Foreign Secretary and Right Honourable Member for South West Norfolk said, "We will keep the lights on in Ukraine." And I thank the Right Honourable Secretary of State for talking about 856 mobile generators, but I wonder, can he update the House on what part the Electricity Network Support Task Force is now having so that we can honour the former Foreign Secretary's pledge?
Well, we continue to work with the Ukrainians to help them keep the lights on, to help them keep their water going, and not just in the here and now, but also to help their energy resilience in the future. As I say, we will ensure that our support to Ukraine adapts to account for their changing needs and circumstances.
Mark Pritchard.
Is it not the case that Putin's weaponisation of food should be a wake-up call for those African countries, many of them Commonwealth countries, that have perhaps inadvertently bought into the false narrative of Putin over the war and recently abstained rather than voted for the UN resolution, and they should understand that Russia and Putin are an unreliable partner for Africa?
The whole world, including Commonwealth nations, our friends in Africa and other parts of the global south, should recognise that Vladimir Putin is no friend of theirs. He is using their hunger as leverage in his war against the Ukrainians, and they should be able to see what is happening. We will continue to help get grain out of Ukraine to help them put food on their tables.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Secretary of State, Foreign Secretary, very much for his statement and for his answers. And also can I particularly thank him for the £220 million of humanitarian aid, which I think is incredibly important. But with special reference to the humanitarian aid passage, can the Foreign Secretary confirm that there are still corridors where medical supplies and goods and supplies are still reaching those innocent people caught in the midst of Putin's despicable criminal attacks?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable gentleman makes an incredibly important point. As well as putting the money on the table, we have to make sure that our support gets to the people that need it. We will constantly look at ways of ensuring that is the case. He will understand that I will refrain from going into details about the aid corridors that are currently in place.
Kevin Foster.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Foreign Secretary will know, the attack in February was not the first invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and they've been occupying illegally territory for the last 8 years, including the Crimea. Therefore, is he clear in his own mind that any strikes on Crimean territory, in particular on Sebastopol naval facilities, is a strike on Ukrainian territory, not on Russian territory?
My right honourable friend makes an incredibly important point. This conflict did not start in February. The most recent phase of this conflict started in February, but there have been Ukrainians who have been attacked, abused and occupied by Russian forces for many, many years before that. We must never lose sight of that fact.
Henry Smith.
Deputy Speaker, my right honourable friend spoke about Iran supplying drones to Russia to attack Ukrainians. Can he say a little bit more about the implications that has on the nuclear deal that we have with Iran, the world has with Iran?
He raises an important point, but it is fundamentally a separate issue. Our resolve to prevent, and in the international resolve, to prevent further nuclear proliferation remains unchanged. We will continue working with our allies to ensure that Iran does not acquire a nuclear weapon, but we will also ensure that we prevent Iran, and indeed anyone else, from exporting arms to Russia that are being used in this conflict in Ukraine.
Saki Bhatt.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's incredibly worrying that Iran is undermining the Ukrainian defence and putting Ukrainian civilians at risk by supplying Russia with Shahed drones. I understand that we've sanctioned 3 Iranian commanders, but can my right honourable friend confirm that he and the Prime Minister are willing to go further if needed, and he'll be raising the issue when he meets his counterparts at the G7 this Thursday?
I can assure my right honourable friend that we will continue to keep our sanctions package under review, and we will respond to any further breaches of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, and that we will ensure that the message is sent that those people and those companies that are supplying arms to Russia in breach of UN Security Council resolutions will be responded to.
Finally, Brandon Clark-Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I say how truly astounded I am at the bravery of the tens of thousands of Ukrainians who have stepped up to defend their homeland. And can my right honourable friend assure me that the UK is doing all it can with its allies to make sure that they receive the necessary training for them to be able to do their jobs?
Madam Deputy Speaker, at the beginning of the year at the United Nations, I said the Ukrainians would defend their homeland ferociously. They have done exactly that. My respect for those people, both the professional soldiers, air personnel, sailors in the Ukrainian armed forces before the invasion, and those who teachers, builders, catwalk models, former politicians who have taken up arms to defend their country, have the most enormous respect from across the world. I can assure my honourable friend that we will continue to support them as they defend themselves against this illegal, unprovoked and barbaric invasion.
Thank you. That concludes the statement from the Foreign Secretary. I'm pausing for a moment to allow members who intend to leave the chamber to do so swiftly and quietly, in order that we can proceed to our next item of business, and to give the dramatis personae the opportunity to be in place. Statement. The Home Secretary.
With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Order. Let's just make clear from the beginning, this is a very serious statement on a serious matter that is affecting a lot of people, and the Home Secretary will be heard with dignity. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With permission, I would like to make a statement about asylum processing at Manston and the incident in Dover yesterday. At around 11:20 a.m. on Sunday, police were called to Western Jetfoil. Officers established that 2 to 3 incendiary devices had been thrown at the Home Office premises. The suspect was identified, quickly located at a nearby petrol station, and confirmed dead. The Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit attended to ensure there were no further threats. Kent Police are not currently treating this as a terrorist incident. Fortunately, there were only 2 minor injuries, but this is a shocking incident, and my thoughts are with all of those who are affected. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have received regular updates from the police. While I understand the desire for answers, investigators must have the necessary space to work. I know the whole House will join me in paying tribute to everyone involved in the response, including the emergency services, military, Border Force, Immigration Enforcement, and the Asylum Intake Unit. Madam Deputy Speaker, my priority remains the safety and the well-being of our teams and contractors, as well as the people in our care. Several hundred migrants were relocated to Manston yesterday to ensure their safety. Western Jetfoil is now fully operational again. I can also inform the House that my right honourable friend, the Minister for Immigration, visited the Manston site yesterday and that I will visit shortly. My right honourable friend was reassured by the dedication of staff as they work to make this site safe and secure while suitable onward accommodation is found. As members will be aware, we need to meet our statutory duties around detention and also fulfil legal duties to provide accommodation for those who would otherwise be destitute. We also have a duty to the wider public to ensure that anyone who has entered our country illegally undergoes essential security checks and is not immediately free to wander around local communities with no fixed abode. When we face so many arrivals so quickly, it is practically impossible to procure over 1,000 beds at such short notice. Consequently, we have recently expanded the site and are working tirelessly to improve facilities. There are, of course, competing and heavy demands on housing stock, including for Ukrainians, Afghans, and social housing. We are negotiating with accommodation providers. I continue to look at all available options to overcome the challenges we face with supply. This is an urgent matter, Madam Deputy Speaker, which I will continue to oversee personally. I will now turn to our immigration and asylum system more widely. Let me be clear. This is a global migration crisis. We have seen an unprecedented number of attempts to illegally cross the channel in small boats. Some 40,000 people have crossed this year alone, more than double the number of arrivals by the same point last year. Not only is it unnecessary, because many have come from another safe country, it is lethally dangerous. We must stop it. It is vital that we dismantle the international crime gangs behind this phenomenon. Cooperation with the French has stopped over 29,000 illegal crossings since the start of the year, twice as many as last year, and destroyed over 1,000 boats. And our UK-France Joint Intelligence Cell has dismantled 55 organised crime groups since it was established in 2020. The National Crime Agency is at the forefront of this fight. Indeed, NCA officers recently joined what is believed to be the biggest ever international operation targeting smuggling networks. This year has seen a surge in the number of Albanian arrivals, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of them, I'm afraid to say, abusing our modern slavery laws. We are working to ensure Albanian cases are processed and individuals are removed as swiftly as possible, sometimes within days. The Rwanda partnership will further disrupt the business model of the smuggling gangs and deter migrants from putting their lives at risk. I'm committed to making that partnership work. Labour want to cancel it. While we will continue to support the vulnerable via safe and legal routes, people coming here illegally from safe countries are not welcome and should not expect to stay. Where it is necessary to change the law, we will not hesitate to do so. I share the sentiment that has been expressed by members from across the House who want to see cases in the UK dealt with swiftly. Our asylum transformation programme will help bring down the backlog. It is already having an impact. A pilot in Leeds reduced interview times by over 1/3 and has seen productivity almost double. We are also determined to address the wholly unacceptable situation, which has left taxpayers with a bill of £6.8 million a day for hotel accommodation. And let me set out to the House a situation that I found when I arrived as Home Secretary in September. at the Home Office. I was appalled to learn that there were over 35,000 migrants staying in hotel accommodation around the country at exorbitant cost to the taxpayer. I instigated an urgent review.
Home Secretary.
I pushed officials to identify accommodation options which would be more cost-effective and delivered swiftly while meeting our legal obligations to migrants. I've held regular operational meetings with frontline officials and have been energetically seeking alternative sites. But I have to be honest, this takes time and there are many hurdles. I foresaw the concerns at Manston in September and deployed additional resource and personnel to deliver a rapid increase in emergency accommodation. To be clear, like the majority of the British people, I am very concerned about hotels, but I have never blocked their usage. Indeed, since I took over, 12,000 people have arrived, 9,500 people have been transferred out of Manston or Western Jetfoil, many of them into hotels. And I've never ignored legal advice. As a former Attorney General, I know the importance of taking legal advice into account. At every point, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have worked hard to find alternative accommodation to relieve the pressure at Manston. What I have refused to do is to prematurely release thousands of people into local communities without having anywhere for them to stay. That is not just the wrong thing to do, Madam Deputy Speaker. That would be the worst thing to do. For the local community in Kent, for the safety of those under our care, and for the integrity of our borders. The Government is resolute in our determination to make illegal entry to the UK unviable. It is unnecessary, lethally dangerous, unfair on migrants who play by the rules, and unfair on the law-abiding, patriotic majority of British people. It is also ruinously expensive, and it makes all of us less safe. Madam Deputy Speaker, as Home Secretary, I have a plan to bring about the change that is so urgently needed to deliver an immigration system that works in the interests of the British people, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement? Yesterday's petrol bomb attack on the Western Jetfoil Centre was truly appalling. I'm sure the whole House will condemn it in the strongest possible terms. And I echo the Home Secretary's tribute to the emergency services and Border Force staff who responded. But I must ask her, can she tell me whether counter-terror police and counter-extremism units are involved in the investigation? It doesn't make sense for them not to be. Why are they not? Turning to the dreadful conditions at Manston, 4,000 people are now on a site designed to accommodate 1,600 people, with some families there for weeks. Conditions that have been described as inhumane, with risks of fire, disorder and infection. There are confirmed diphtheria outbreaks, reports of scabies and MRSA outbreaks, also reports of outbreaks of violence and untrained staff. She said nothing about what she was doing to address those immediate public health crises and also the issues for untrained staff. Behind these are deeper failures in the government's policies on asylum and channel crossings. Decision-making has collapsed. The Home Office took just 14,000 initial asylum decisions in the last 12 months, compared to 28,000 6 years ago. 96% of the small boat arrivals last year have still not had a decision, and initial decisions alone are taking more than 400 days on this Conservative government's watch. Can she confirm that the Nationalities Borders Bill and changes to immigration rules have in fact added further bureaucracy and delays, leading to tens of thousands more people waiting in asylum accommodation and more than £100 million extra on asylum accommodation bills because their policies are pushing up the use of hotels and the increase in delays. There's also been a total failure to prevent a huge proliferation of gangs in the Channel. Why has the Home Secretary refused our calls for a major new National Crime Agency unit with hundreds of additional specialist officers to work with Europol and others to crack down on the gangs, as well as the urgent work needed with France to get a proper agreement in place? And can she also confirm on the Rwanda plan that she has spent an extra £20 million on top of the £120 million already spent on a policy that she has herself described as failing and that her officials have described as unenforceable and with a high risk of fraud? And isn't it now time to drop this unethical and unworkable scheme and put the money into tackling the backlogs and tackling the criminal gangs instead? And let me ask her about her own decisions, which are there are very serious allegations now being reported that the Home Secretary was warned by officials and other ministers she was acting outside the law by failing to provide alternative accommodation. Can she confirm that she turned down contingency plans that she was offered that would have reduced overcrowding, as the reports say? There are also legal obligations, including under the 1999 Act and the 2018 regulations. Can she confirm she was advised repeatedly that she was breaking the law by failing to agree to these plans? One of these meetings on Manston was on the 19th of October. Can she confirm she refused these proposals on that date? It was the same day that she broke sections 2.3 and sections 1.4 of the Ministerial Code. So can she confirm, or can she tell us whether in fact she breached the Ministerial Code, which provides for ministers abiding by the law? Did she breach the Ministerial Code 3 times in a single day? And how is anyone supposed to have confidence in her as a Home Secretary with these serious issues? She refers in her statement to security checks. These are very important, but her statement is undermined by her own disregard for security. Her letter today makes clear that the incident over which she resigned was not a one-off, and contrary to her previous claims to have reported the breach rapidly as soon as she realised, she instead had to be challenged several times by one of her colleagues. She has also not answered the crucial questions about security breaches while she was Attorney General. Can she tell us whether she was involved in a leak to the Telegraph, reported in the Telegraph on the 21st of January, about information about Attorney General action on a case involving the security service? Has she sent any other government documents by WhatsApp, Telegram or other social media? And given that it's been less than a week since she was reappointed, and less than a fortnight since she was first forced to resign for breaching the Ministerial Code, and every day since her reappointment there have been more stories about possible security or Ministerial Code breaches, how is anybody supposed to have confidence in her, given the serious responsibilities of the Home Secretary to stand up for our national security, for security standards and for public safety? The Prime Minister promised that this would be a government of integrity, of professionalism and of accountability. Isn't the Home Secretary letting everyone down and failing on all of these counts?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. To pick up on some of the specific points that the Honourable Lady mentions, I'm not going to comment on any details relating to this specific case or the individual under consideration. But there has been clear work afoot with the NCA and all partners to try and tackle the problem of illegal migration. I'm very encouraged by the relationship that we have built with the French, and I'm grateful to the French authorities for their real commitment and work on tackling this problem. But it's absolutely clear that, as I made clear in my statement, that on no occasion did I block hotels or veto advice to procure extra and emergency accommodation. Actually, the data and the facts are that on my watch, since the 6th of September, over 30 new hotels were agreed, which would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces, which will be brought into use. Since the start of October, over 13 new hotels will provide over 1,800 additional hotel bed spaces. So, and also since the 6th of September, 9,000 migrants have left Manston, many of them heading towards hotel accommodation. Those are the facts. I encourage the Right Honourable Lady to stick to the facts and not fantasy. Madam Deputy Speaker, however, she raises some other points, and I would just like to say this, that my letter to the Home Affairs Select Committee sent today addresses all of the matters that she has just raised transparently and comprehensively. I've been clear that I made an error of judgment. I apologised for that error. I took responsibility for it and I resigned. But, Madam Deputy Speaker,
does the House want to hear what the Home Secretary has to say? Home Secretary.
I apologise for the error. I took responsibility, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I resigned for the error. But let's be clear about what's really going on here, Madam Deputy Speaker. The British people deserve to know which party is serious about stopping the invasion on our southern coast and which party is not. Some 40,000 people have arrived on the south coast this year alone, many of them facilitated by criminal gangs, some of them actual members of criminal gangs. So let's stop pretending that they are all refugees in distress. The whole country knows that that is not true, and it's only the honourable members opposite who pretend otherwise. Madam Deputy Speaker, we need to be straight with the public. The system is broken. Illegal migration is out of control, and too many people are more interested in playing political parlour games, covering up the truth, than solving the problem. I, Madam Deputy Speaker, am utterly serious about ending the scourge of illegal migration, and I am determined to do whatever it takes to break the criminal gangs and fix our hopelessly lax asylum system. That, Madam Deputy Speaker, is why I am in government. And that is why there are some people who would prefer to be rid of me. Well,
order! I should just point out that I can hear who's making the noise, and it'll be a long time before they're called to ask a question. Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let them try. I know that I speak for the decent, law-abiding, patriotic majority of British people from every background that wants safe and secure borders. Labour is running scared that this party might just deliver them.
Sir Roger Gale.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will you allow me first to express my condolences to the families of those affected by the incident at Dover, and particularly the family of the man who was responsible, who had very severe mental health difficulties. I think our thoughts ought to be with all of them. Madam Deputy Speaker, can I also thank my right honourable friend, the Minister of State, for taking the trouble and the time to come yesterday to see the facilities at Manston for himself and to greatly understand the problems that we've been facing. And can I thank the staff at Manston for the incredible dedication that they've been showing under very difficult circumstances. They are doing a superb job, and I hope everybody understands that. Madam Deputy Speaker, the facility at Manston, the asylum processing facility, was opened in January to take 1,500 people and to process them daily in not more than 48 hours, but mainly in 24 hours. That facility operated absolutely magnificently and very efficiently indeed until 5 weeks ago, when I'm afraid the Home Secretary took the policy decision not to commission further accommodation. And it is that that has led to the crisis at Manston. Will my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, now give the House an assurance, first, that the adequate accommodation will be provided to enable the Manston facility to return to its previous work? Will she honour the undertaking given by the Right Honourable Lady, the Member for Witham, and my honourable friend, the Member for Corby, who have indicated that this would be a temporary facility handling only 1,500 people per day, and that it would not be a permanent residence? And will she give a further undertaking that under no circumstances will Manston be turned into a permanent refugee camp?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his commitment to safeguarding the people who are at Manston and representing his local constituents in the area. And I was very pleased to meet with him a few weeks ago to hear from him about the situation at Manston. As I said, I just must gently correct him, however. On no occasion have I blocked the procurement of hotels or alternative accommodation to ease the pressure on Manston. I'm afraid that simply isn't true. And I'll repeat it again, but since September the 6th, when I was appointed, over 30 new hotels have been agreed to. They would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces, many of those available to the people in Manston. Also, since the 6th of September, over 9,000 people have left Manston, many of those heading towards hotels. So on no occasion have I blocked the use of hotels. And I would just gently refer members of the House who seem to be labouring under that misapprehension to the Home Affairs Select Committee session last week, where officials and the various frontline professionals who've been working with me on this issue confirm that we've been working energetically to procure alternative accommodation urgently for several weeks now. There are procedural and resource difficulties and challenges in doing that quickly. I would very much like to get alternative accommodation delivered more quickly, but we are working at pace to deliver contingency accommodation to deal with this acute problem.
Stuart MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Home Secretary for her statement, and I join the whole House in condemning the frightening attack at Western Jetfoil, in sending our sympathy to all those who were impacted, and indeed our thanks to all who responded so professionally. But, Madam Speaker, responsibility for the disaster and dysfunction at Manston and the unlawful detention conditions there lies squarely with the Home Secretary herself and her predecessors. She and they knew what was happening, including the numbers arriving, and she was provided with advice that, by all accounts, she did not act on. Now, she's very carefully said that she did not block hotel use, but did she at any point avoid supporting new procurement? And if not, why is it that we heard that her successor, or predecessor, depending on which way you look at it, had to intervene? Ultimately, Madam Speaker, what was a functioning facility in the summer is now totally unsafe, and that was on her watch. Looking to the future, what now? Unfortunately, the Home Secretary offers only the same old failed soundbites, discredited policies and nasty rhetoric. What we need is an expansion of safe legal routes, at a minimum reversing the loss of the routes under the Dublin Convention. Instead of £120 million in our disgraceful Rwanda dream, that could have trebled the number of asylum caseworkers working to clear the backlog. And why not fast-forward claims, for example, from the 16,000 Syrians and Afghans, half of whom have been waiting for over 6 months. Make decisions on their cases quickly. 95% and more will get asylum. They can move on and we can free up accommodation. Madam Speaker, on her letter today, last week the Home Secretary resigned, claiming she accepted responsibility, but the facts suggest that she tried to dodge it but got caught. Why else did she find time to request the accidental email recipient was to delete and forget, yet only notified senior officials and the Prime Minister after being confronted? These excuses will not wash. Ultimately, how can one so-called misjudgment last week be a resignation offence
and yet she can stay this week after admitting 6 of the very same misjudgments. She said no documents were top secret, but how many were marked official and sensitive? Did she do similar as Attorney General? How do we know?
Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, her return so quickly after an admitted ministerial code breach is a farce. It reflects poorly on her and poorly on the Prime Minister. Both should think again so that someone else can get on with the real work.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I refer the honourable gentleman to the letter that I sent today to the Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. I've been upfront about the details of my diary on the 19th of October, cooperative with any review that's taken place. I've apologised, I've taken responsibility, and that's why I resigned. I hope the House will see that I'm willing to apologise without hesitation for what I've done and any mistakes that I've made. But what I will not do, under any circumstances, is apologise for things that I haven't done. It's been said that I sent a top-secret document. That's wrong. It's been said that I sent a document about cybersecurity. That's wrong. It's been said that I sent a document about the intelligence agencies that would compromise national security. And it's wrong. 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 Madam Deputy Speaker, what is wrong is that, and worrying, is that without compunction, these assertions have been repeated as fact by politicians and journalists. And I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to clarify the record today.
Natalie Elphicke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to put on record my thanks to all of the first responders to the horrific incidents that happened at Dover yesterday. Constituents working at the Dover facility have raised concerns about the current safety at the site. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this type of facility has no place in a busy open port like Dover? And could she look at moving it to a more appropriate, secure location immediately? And does she also agree that we cannot keep doing more of the same, paying millions of pounds to the French, but seeing ever-increasing numbers of illegal arrivals? It is now time for a new approach with the French to stop the boats leaving the French beaches, a joint channel security zone to tackle this issue and bring an end to this illegal immigration activity once and for all.
Well, I want to thank my honourable friend for her indefatigable campaigning on this issue, and I've been very grateful to her for her direct input on this issue. This is incredibly difficult. I don't want to sugarcoat the problem. There are incredibly multifaceted challenges that we have to deal with, and when it comes to Manston, like her, I'm very concerned about the conditions there, and I have been so for several weeks. That's why I've taken urgent action to stand up an operational team to increase the emergency accommodation on the site on a temporary and emergency basis. I was not willing to release hundreds of migrants into the local community. I won't do that. I will do everything I can to find cost-effective and practical alternatives. We need to find many more sites for accommodation and beds. We are looking at all instances, whether that is hotels, whether that's land owned by other agencies, for example, MOD or other government departments, looking at other dispersal around the country. We have to look exhaustively, but it isn't easy.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the Home Secretary to her place? And I look forward to her attending at the Home Affairs Select Committee on the 23rd of November, as we haven't seen a Home Secretary since February of this year. The Home Affairs Select Committee heard evidence last week that Manston was at breaking point. We were also told by the Home Office's Director General for Customer Services that 3 hotels were approved 1 week ago when the Right Honourable Member for Welwyn Hatfield was the then Home Secretary. So can this Home Secretary confirm exactly how many hotels or alternative accommodation options she was personally invited by her officials to approve for use during her first tenure as Home Secretary, and how many hotels or alternative accommodation options she actually did grant approval and permission for during her time. And finally, perhaps the Home Secretary might wish to join the Home Affairs Select Committee when we visit Manston again for the second time this week.
Well, I read with interest the session that the Honourable Lady conducted last week at her Select Committee, and I just want to put on record my immense thanks to the officials. The officials that you heard evidence from are brilliant and simply the best in the business, and they work day in, day out to try and get the best service. And I note from questions 67 to 78 approximately, there was a lot of discussion about my involvement and my grip of the situation, and I encourage all members to read that section of the transcript, which confirms on the record by officials with whom I've been working directly that there has been active procurement of hotels. There's been a huge amount of work which has been put on. How many? I will repeat myself again. Since the 6th of September, over 30 new hotels have been agreed, providing over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces. That's been under my watch. That's been when I've been in charge of the Home Office. And I'm very grateful to all those officials. And I must put on record my thanks to the now departed Minister Purseglove, who has been instrumental in assisting in dealing with this problem.
Craig McKinley.
My right honourable friend mentioned Albanians in her statement. I hear that 2/3 of those at Manston are Albanians. Does she have an absolute figure for that? But is my right honourable friend aware that in Germany and Sweden, that work to the same immigration accords as we do, they allow 0 applicants from Albania? Surely it stands to reason that an EU applicant country, a NATO country, a country that's in the Council of Europe and is patently not a war zone, we should not be accepting refugee status and claims from such a country. What is she going to do about that aspect of this problem?
Well, my honourable friend again raised a very important feature which has emerged over the last 6 to 9 months about the prominence of Albanian migrants arriving on our shores. And he's right. Albania is not a war-torn country. And it is very difficult to see how claims for asylum really can be legitimate claims for asylum. I would also note that we see a large number of Albanian migrants arriving here and claiming to be victims of modern slavery. Again, I really am circumspect of those claims because Albania, of course, is a signatory to the European Convention Against Trafficking, the original convention that underlies our modern slavery laws. And actually, if those people are genuinely modern slavery victims, they should be claiming that protection in Albania.
Diane Abbott.
The Home Secretary will be aware that one of the problems with the asylum system is the unacceptably long time it takes to process claims. The Home Affairs Select Committee took evidence from the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, and he told us that currently caseworkers, decision makers, are making 1.3 decisions a week. The Leeds pilot, which is referred to, has put the numbers of decisions up to 2.7 decisions a week. Doesn't the Home Secretary understand that this is far too slow? And what is she going to do about it? And isn't it the case that if she spent less time playing to the gallery on immigration and more time dealing with the practical problems, this would be to the benefit of the taxpayer, the Home Office staff that work so hard, and to the asylum seekers themselves?
It's not often I say this, Madam Deputy, but I do actually agree with a lot of what the Right Honourable Lady has just said. She is right. And when I arrived at the Home Office in September, I was very dismayed to find that, as was set out at the Select Committee last week, only 4% of those claims waiting in the system have been processed so far. So we have a very slow-moving system. That is unacceptable, and that is a big part of the problem. And part of our plan to solve the problem is to speed up asylum processing. We're putting more resources behind it. We're putting more technology behind it. We're trying to identify how we can be more efficient. But yes, it's a big feature which is clogging up the system, and we see the pressure playing out at Manston.
Lawson.
Speaker, clearly the situation at Manston has become unsustainable because of the record numbers coming across the channel. 40,000, and November last year was the highest month, so we haven't seen the end of it. And of course, as my honourable friend from Thanet South has said, a record number of Albanians, 12,000, up from just 50 2 years ago. So following on from his question, what exactly is the arrangement with the Albanian government about returns? What arrangements is she looking at to fast-track Albanians, potentially in separate processing centres, helped by those Albanian officials we've allowed to come here to assist? How many Albanians have so far been returned in the last 12 months? How many of those Albanians have taken voluntary return payments to return? And of those, how many of them have actually come back to the UK again?
Well, again, my right honourable friend is right to mention the returns agreement, and we really want to maximise the deployment of the terms of that agreement. I think that's a brilliant starting point for trying to accelerate some of the processing and ultimately the removals of Albanian nationals. Albanian nationals are received in the same way as other small boat arrivals, and however, due to the excellent relationship built with my Albanian counterpart, we are able to expedite removal of Albanians who have no reason to be in the UK. We want to maximise that, we want to push forward with that and faster.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to read to the Home Secretary a text message that a colleague of mine received this afternoon from an immigration expert. He says, "Just had a call with Ukraine that has reduced our team to tears. People are facing losing their lives in Kyiv or watching their children freeze in the countryside purely because of delays in processing their visas. UK Home Office, paper pushing and unnecessary waits are costing people their lives in Ukraine." Ukraine, Madam Deputy Speaker, not Albania, Ukraine. Is that what the Home Secretary means when she says that this is a government taking asylum seriously?
Secretary.
Well, I do dispute his version of events with respect. Since 2015, Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK has offered a place to over 380,000 men, women and children seeking safety, including those from Hong Kong, Syria, Afghanistan and Ukraine, as well as many family members of refugees.
John Redwood.
I strongly support all that the Home Secretary said in her opening statement. She spoke for the nation in saying we need to control this problem, and she spoke for all those caught up in these tragic events. So I hope that all men and women of goodwill will get behind her and that the Home Office will fully support her in making sure we can speed up processing and in returning all those illegal economic migrants to the safe countries they came from.
Secretary.
My right honourable friend speaks a lot of sense, as always, and he's right. The British people have had enough of an out-of-control borders system, and it's incumbent on this government, and I know for a fact that this Prime Minister takes this issue extremely seriously, and I know that he will leave no stone unturned until the problem is fixed.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There is nothing patriotic about making children suffer, but that is exactly what is happening as a direct result of this Home Secretary's failure to get to grips with processing asylum. She talks as if the hotels are somehow a better option. In my constituency, there is one with 150 children in, squeezed alongside another 350 adults, 7 or 8 to a room. No notice to the local authority they would be placed there. No cooking facilities. No school places for these primary school-aged children. No clothes for most of them, especially for the winter weather. No play facilities, if they are allowed out at all, of these prisons. No safeguarding, as far as any of us can see. If the Home Secretary is so confident that this is meeting her duty of care on behalf of this country, then will she publish the contract requirements for how children are housed in hotels and the precise details of the sorts of services they should expect and that we should be proud of as a country dealing with those fleeing asylum?
Madam Secretary.
Well, we are currently accommodating unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in hotels, in hotels with a maximum occupancy of 353, and there is additional accommodation available coming on stream. But what I would just say to the honourable lady is this: I think it's a fallacy to suggest that we're somehow cutting corners. When I've arrived at the Home Office, I've been frankly very dismayed and appalled to find that we're spending on average £150 per person per night to accommodate people in hotels. By my standard, that's quite a nice hotel. And upon my review and closer scrutiny of how that decision-making was taking place, I identified several four-star hotels around the country being procured for this purpose. For me, that's not an acceptable use of taxpayers' money.
Jane Hunt.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Unsolicited economic migration to the UK via illegal trafficking must be stopped. We must use our limited resources to support valid asylum cases that have not come from a safe country. What steps is the Home Office taking to return illegal immigrants now to their home countries in the cases of countries who will accept them?
Madam Secretary.
Well, we take removals very importantly, and actually part of the plan to solve this is actually to try and accelerate the turnaround and the processing of people who are arriving illegally. We've had some success recently in removing people back to Albania within quite a short period of time, but we need to go further and faster.
Joanna Cherry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I just gently remind the Home Secretary that it is not illegal to seek asylum. What is illegal is to detain people without a proper basis in law. So can she confirm that she has ignored legal advice that keeping these asylum seekers at Manston for more than 24 hours could be illegal detention? And can she also tell us whether she's been advised that what's happening at Manston may amount to unlawful deprivation of liberty in terms of Article 5 of the ECHR, and also inhuman and degrading treatment in terms of Article 3 ECHR? Now, despite the Home Secretary's best efforts, we're still bound to comply with the Convention by virtue of our domestic law. So what's she going to do about all of this? And even if she doesn't care about the human rights of the people detained at Manston, does she understand that her failure to obey the law here may end up costing the taxpayers vast amounts of money in terms of court fees and damages?
Well, I confirm that I have not and ever ignored legal advice. The Law Officer's Convention, which I still take very seriously, means I won't comment on the contents of legal advice that I may have seen. But what I will say is this: I am not prepared to release migrants prematurely into the local community in Kent to no fixed abode. That's an unacceptable option to me.
Nick Fletcher.
In the Secretary of State's statement, she spoke of the successes of the UK-French Joint Alliance cell, stopping 29,000 illegal immigrants crossing. What are her thoughts on doubling these resources and finally eliminating these dangerous crossings?
Part of our plan to tackle this issue is about increasing our resources and our manpower to intercept and detect the organised criminal gangs upstream. That's what part of the work with the French entails, and that's why I was very encouraged by discussions I've had with my French counterpart, Minister Darmanin, about how we can work better and more closely together with our intelligence agencies and our law enforcement agencies jointly upstream to try and intercept early on.
Ben Bradshaw.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Is it still explained to incoming ministers, as it was to me more than 21 years ago, how easily one's mobile phone can be compromised by organised criminals and hostile foreign powers? If so, how was her mobile phone and the mobile phone of the former Prime Minister, the member for South West Norfolk, compromised in these security breaches?
Secretary.
Well, I've set out the details in the letter of today, but I've made it clear that there was no issue about a compromise to national security.
Sir Desmond Swain.
Can I thank her for her dedication and the work that she is doing?
What are the prospects of securing an alternative airline carrier to make the Rwanda plan a reality?
Home Secretary.
I'm very committed to delivering the Rwanda plan. That took a huge amount of work and commitment by the my right honourable friend, the member for Witham, and the former Prime Minister, the member for Uxbridge. And I think that it is incredibly crucial to our multifaceted approach to this problem. If you look at the Australian experience of tackling a similar issue, they will say that one very powerful tool they had in tackling the problem was the moment they were able to return people or move them out of the territory to Papua New Guinea or Nauru. It had a massive deterrent effect, and that's what we want to deploy.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The conditions at Manston are clearly unsafe and inhumane, and we know obviously the suffering that people have experienced there after 12 years of shameful watch of this government. However, we also do understand the lack of accommodation across the country, and that's why I asked the Home Secretary why she won't open up a Homes for Refugees scheme so people in our communities can support people properly within our own communities.
Yes. Home Secretary.
But whilst the issue at Manston is indisputably concerning, I don't want us to create alarm unnecessarily. So when she talks about the language that she uses, I do gently urge her not to use inflammatory language. We are aware, for example, we are aware of a very small number of cases of diphtheria reported at Manston, but there are very good medical facilities there. All protocols have been followed. People are being fed, they are being clothed, they are being sheltered. There are very high numbers at Manston, unprecedented numbers. We are working at pace to alleviate that pressure and getting people out. We anticipate, hopefully, 300 people leaving this evening and so on throughout the week. We are working urgently to solve the problem.
Dr. Julian Lewis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, given that it seems virtually impossible to stop large numbers of people landing illegally, does she think it will be possible to enable those who have landed illegally and have a poor case to be removed promptly without a change in the law? And if she thinks the law has to be changed, which law is it?
Home Secretary.
Well, one of the other plans that we've been working on is to change the law, because unfortunately our laws have too low a threshold, and that's why our modern slavery laws are being abused by illegitimate claimants. And we also need to take action to accelerate the process and to prevent the exploitation of our laws. People are coming here, they're claiming asylum unfairly, unjustifiably. They're claiming modern slavery laws, they're abusing our human rights laws and other protections. They're frankly taking advantage of the generosity of the British people.
Absala Begum.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Manston is supposed to be a short-term holding facility. People are not supposed to be there for more than 48 hours. That means people must be being detained illegally in these conditions. So will the Home Secretary tell us how many people have been detained for more than 48 hours? How many claims for unlawful detention is she expecting, and at what cost?
Home Secretary.
Well, we are aware that people have been detained, and we have very, very high numbers at Manston, and that's why we're taking really exhaustive steps to ensure that we can procure alternative sites. We're looking at the dispersal mechanism and sites around the country and other local authorities. We are looking at hotels. Unfortunately, we have no other choice but to look at hotels at the moment. We are looking at other immigration detention or removal centres. So we're looking at a wide range of alternative places to which we can safely accommodate the migrants.
Kit Malthouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the Home Secretary's statement? In it, she says importantly that everybody who arrives illegally undergoes essential security checks before they're released. Could she confirm that this applies not just to those who claim asylum, but also those who land and do not claim asylum and are in effect arriving without a visa and therefore are eligible for temporary release from which they may not return?
Secretary.
Well, he's right. The processing is as follows. People will arrive. They go, first of all, to the Western jet foil, where they are, they get dry clothes. They are looked after in the immediate arrival onto the territory. They are then taken to Manston for biosecurity and security checks, is the type that he's just talked about.
Chris Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. She says the system's broken. Well, yes, it is broken. When you see the number of people taking dangerous trips across the Channel rise year on year and year, yes, it's broken when it takes longer and longer to deal with individual claims, so it's of greater cost to the British taxpayer. Yes, it's broken when you have thousands of people in completely inappropriate accommodation, which is probably breaking the law, and they may end up having to seek compensation against the government, again threatening the taxpayer. Yes, it's broken when ministers, a Home Secretary, breaches the Ministerial Code 6 times and only thinks that she has to step aside for 6 days. I believe in the rehabilitation of offenders, but don't you have to serve the time first? Or is there one rule for everybody else and a completely different one for her?
I gently refer the honourable gentleman to my letter that I sent today to the chairman of the Home Affairs Committee. That's been clear about the timeline, my actions, the decisions for my actions. I apologised, I took responsibility, and that's why I resigned. But what this political witch hunt is all about is about ignoring the facts of the problem. The facts of the problem are that we do have a problem with the slow time that it takes to process asylum claims, and that's why we are taking immediate action to bring the asylum backlog down. We've got a pilot which is being rolled out. We've got more resources and decision makers being put into the front line, and we've got a different system of trying to assess the claims so that we can try and speed up the time that people are waiting for a decision.
Sir William Cash.
May I commend my right honourable friend very strongly for her statement. Does she agree that we must make a clear, legal and enforceable distinction in statute law between genuine refugees and illegal economic migrants and deal with this problem once and for all?
And Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend is spot on. I think we have to tell the truth to the British people. This is these people are not all refugees fleeing war, fleeing persecution, with human rights violations that they have suffered. They are coming here, often at their own will, often having paid tens of thousands of pounds to have procured a dangerous and lethal journey illegally across the Channel, because they know that our laws aren't fit for purpose, and they know that they can get away with a spurious claim.
Alison Thewlis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's been widely reported that children are being detained at the Manston site. Can she confirm, because her minister couldn't confirm last week, how many children are on site right now?
Secretary.
Well, we don't routinely detain children or unaccompanied asylum-seeking children at Manston, but there are a number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children have been accommodated, not detained, for a brief period this summer while the accommodation was identified. And of course, people were evacuated to Manston yesterday, and that did include children.
Sir Edward Lee.
If people don't want to go to Manston, they can stay in France. But we all know what's really behind these unpleasant personal attacks is because this Home Secretary is the only one with the guts, the determination, the legal knowledge to reform our ridiculous human rights law and detain these people, which is the only way, and send them back, the only way that we're going to deal with this. And those who constantly make these personal attacks to somebody who has made just one mistake and apologise, to remember the old motto, understand and judge not. Has she the determination to amend our ridiculous laws?
Secretary.
My right honourable friend is absolutely right. We need to change the law. There are too many people here coming here and making spurious human rights claims, protracting the asylum application system. They know that they can put in appeal after appeal, they can challenge decisions, and they can spend a lot of time here in full knowledge of the facts that they are not genuine asylum seekers.
Emma Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As the Home Affairs Select Committee report showed, it takes on average 550 days to process unaccompanied children. The report also illustrated that some of these unaccompanied children go missing from their hotels, sometimes temporarily and sometimes permanently. What is the Home Secretary doing to find these children and to protect them from criminal or sexual exploitation?
Secretary.
Well, of course, it's very serious when a child goes missing, and particularly in those circumstances. And when that does happen, we work very closely with the local authorities and the police to operate a robust missing persons protocol. We've also changed the national transfer scheme, so all local authorities with children's services must support young people, and we need to identify and ensure that proper risk assessments are put in place so that we can properly put in place the proper protections to make sure this doesn't happen.
Caroline Noakes.
Can I declare my interest as a member of the RAMP project? Can I ask my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, returning to the issue of children? We've seen some terrible accounts of children sleeping on mats at Manston. Can she reassure the House that no children are being kept at Manston for longer than 48 hours, that there are proper safeguarding procedures in place? Can she let us know what work is being done with Kent County Council to make sure that those children that are there are being safeguarded? And can she please urge my right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, to come to the Women and Equality Select Committee, where we're doing an inquiry into the asylum system. He's not available this Wednesday, but can he make it as soon as possible, please?
Secretary.
Well, we take extremely seriously our duty towards a duty of care towards children and young people who are in the system, and as I said, there are delays in the system because of an extortionate amount of cases which are due to be processed. But we are working to prioritise applications from children and young people where possible. And we want to increase overall decision making and the numbers and the capacity so that children are processed far more quickly than others.
For Eagle.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary has come to the House today and announced to us that the immigration system is broken. Can she tell us who's been in power for the last 12 years?
Secretary.
Well, I tell you what the British people need to know. They need to know that it was the Labour government who oversaw mass migration and effectively a de facto open borders policy with record levels of immigration into this country. And it's the Labour Party that will continue to allow uncontrolled borders. They would cancel Rwanda, they would not take any action to stop illegal migration, and they would make a mockery of our borders.
Kate Knifton.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State will be aware of concerns that I've raised recently about the lack of joined-up planning between the Home Office, Serco and local authorities regarding asylum accommodation, and the specific concerns I've raised regarding the issue of the use of a hotel in my constituency of Burton. Can I therefore ask the Secretary of State to meet with me and the Staffordshire Leaders Board, who are keen to ensure a joined-up approach to asylum dispersal through improved communication between local authorities, Serco and the Home Office?
Secretary.
Well, coming into the Home Office in September has really shown me how the decision-making process behind choosing the hotels goes on. And I've heard from several colleagues about their concerns about the use of hotels. I'm very happy to meet with her and her colleagues to hear about the concerns in her local area. We need to make them much more evenly distributed. We need to make sure that areas are taking their fair share, but ultimately we need to ensure that people have a bed to stay in and a room to stay in, because that is where the problem originates.
Please remain seated to ask your question, Alan. Alan Durrance.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and good evening. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm sure that all members of this House will join me in thanking the staff undertaking the difficult task of keeping everyone safe in these challenging circumstances. Mr. Deputy Speaker, will the Secretary of State give firm assurances today that members of the Prison Officers Association and other staff working at Manston will remain free from personal liability for any illegal decisions by the government around extended detention?
Secretary.
Well, we are always concerned about the personal responsibilities and safety of the staff at Manston. And let me just take this opportunity to pay tribute to every single person who's been working on the front line, in particular over the last few days, where it's been quite chronic, quite acute and incredibly tough for them. So they are doing a brilliant job, and will do everything to ensure that their professional positions are safeguarded.
Gary Sambrook.
Mr Deputy Speaker, we need to change the definition of asylum. Many people who are in these centres and hotels are illegal migrants. Many of them have taken the chance. They're economic migrants who are taking a chance by crossing the English Channel. Can I ask the Home Secretary, if people come here illegally, why can't we just deport them?
Secretary.
Well, he raises an important point, and he's absolutely right. If you look at other European countries, they take a very different approach to the consideration and processing of asylum claims. The reality is once someone makes an asylum claim, we are duty-bound to consider it. What the Rwanda scheme does, and what's very good about that, is it means that the asylum claim will be considered in Rwanda, and therefore we will be able to physically remove them before that long time delay takes place.
John MacDonald.
I have had consistently 1,500 asylum seekers in hotels in my constituency. I think it's the largest number in any constituency, and I welcome them. I welcome them, and I congratulate the local agencies, the local voluntary sector, local churches, gurdwaras and mosques for all the support that they've given to these people because of the experiences that they've gone through. Many of them suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. However, this situation was meant to be resolved by relocation and the fast processing of the cases themselves, the bulk of which I believe are accepted when they are processed, they're accepted as genuine asylum seekers. That means that now we're into our second year and beyond. It means there is a need now to review the resources that is going into local areas like mine, particularly to support the local NHS and local schools and, yes, the local authority and local voluntary sector. Can I ask the Home Secretary to initiate that review as rapidly as possible? We want to do all we can to assist these people, but obviously we need the local resources to do that.
Home Secretary.
Well, there are challenges, as I've set out today, in securing sufficient accommodation, full stop, whether that's hotels or dispersal accommodation, and that's due to the limited private rental market stock. We do work with local authorities to ensure that there's sufficient support for people who are arriving in those areas, but yes, there is a definite pressure, financial and otherwise, by people being accommodated for long periods of time around the country.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now then, we've got Albanian criminals leaving Albania, which is a safe country. The same criminals are then setting up shop in France. They're then leaving France, which is a safe country, and coming to the UK across the Channel. And then when they get this accommodation, we've got the opposition parties saying the accommodation is not good enough for them. Well, does the Home Secretary agree with me? If the accommodation is not good enough for them, they can get on a dinghy and go straight back to France.
Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend's right. The average cost per night is £150 per person per night in a hotel. By my standards, that's quite a nice hotel, I'm afraid. Therefore, I think any complaints that the accommodation isn't good enough is frankly absolutely indulgent and ungrateful.
Janet Davey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. 5 separate sources told the Sunday Times that legal breach at Manston needed to be resolved urgently by rehousing asylum seekers in alternative accommodation. Are all 5 lying?
Well, as I've said, and I'm very happy to confirm by reference to the timeline, effectively, you know, I've been aware of this issue for several weeks. I would love to be able to magic up thousands of beds overnight. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. As a result of my concerns, which I identified several weeks ago, we've put into place a whole operational command to try and increase the capacity of accommodation, ease the pressure on Manston, but it takes time.
Sir Christopher Cho.
Mr Deputy Speaker, isn't the reason why Sweden and Germany don't countenance asylum seekers from Albania the fact that those countries don't have laws against modern slavery which are being abused and exploited by the Albanian gangs?
Well, as I said,
Secretary.
Albania is a signatory to the European Convention Against Trafficking. That's the originating international convention which underlines our modern slavery laws. There is absolutely no reason in law why an Albanian national cannot claim modern slavery protection in Albania.
Alex Cunningham.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I don't think it was unkind of my honourable friend, the member from Wallasey, to remind the Home Secretary that the systems she's rubbished time and time again today are a product of 12 years of Tory government. Now, staff who are employed at Manston are extremely anxious about their responsibilities and role and how law-breaking decisions affect them. So can the Home Secretary assure the House that staff will remain free from personal liability for any illegal decisions taken by others, including ministers, around extended detention?
Secretary.
I'm very proud of this government's track record on helping some of the most vulnerable people coming to this country from some of the most dangerous parts of the world. 55,000 visas issued under the Ukrainian family scheme, 138,000 Ukrainian sponsorship scheme visas, 15,000 individuals from Afghanistan under Operation Pitting, 5,000 people arrived in the year since Operation Pitting, 20,000 people under the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme. That's a record of which I'm proud.
Jonathan Gullis.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The people of Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Talk are appalled by the amount of illegal economic migrants coming across the English Channel. And again, Stoke-on-Trent, which currently houses over 800, is being asked to carry the burden with an attempt to try and place more in the North Stafford Hotel. Will my right honourable friend immediately stop this abuse of Stoke-on-Trent and instead put illegal economic migrants in places with open border and free movement supporters, such as the Shadow Immigration Minister?
Well, I was very grateful for the time that my honourable friend gave me with his Stoke colleagues to explain exactly the difficulty in Stoke. And what I have identified is that there is a disproportionate distribution of refugees throughout the country in hotels. We need to make it much more equivalent. We need to make it much more cost effective. We need to make it fair.
Dania Griffith.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, in contrast to Labour's commitment to employ 100 extra specialist National Crime Agency officers to tackle the criminal gangs upstream, her predecessor as Home Secretary asked the NCA to draw up plans for a 40% reduction in staff. So can she now explain to us what are her plans for NCA staffing and how does she intend to improve collaboration with the French on this problem?
Working collaboratively with the French is a key component of solving this problem. We can't do it alone, is the simple truth. And that's why I'm very pleased that we have a relationship with the French, and I'm very keen to amplify that relationship. It will involve greater surveillance between the French and the British authorities. It will involve greater intelligence cooperation upstream and interception upstream between the French and British authorities. It will involve joint working at all points in the system. That cooperation is vital.
Leonici.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm sure the Home Secretary knows that she has my full support in doing whatever she can to be able to stop illegal migration into this country. We've had several conversations about this, but does she share my concerns about placing illegal immigrants in places that don't have the infrastructure or the expertise to look after people when they are actually displaced across the UK? But also, would she commit to making sure that she's talking to colleagues on these benches when potentially they may have illegal migrants coming into their constituencies to make sure that we can represent our constituents properly?
Well, ultimately, we need to bear down on the asylum backlog, so there are fewer people in the UK waiting for a decision, and also we need to stop the use of hotels at £6 million a night.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. During her first disastrous spell in the role, the Home Secretary ignored legal advice from her officials that explicitly set out the unlawfulness of the inhumane treatment of migrants at the Manston Centre. That's not inflammatory language, that's fact. And if that's not bad enough, she's now admitted to breaking the Ministerial Code on 6 separate occasions. How on earth can she stand at that dispatch box with a straight face and try to defend the cruelty towards the most desperate of people? Doesn't she need to take a look in the mirror to see who is a threat to national security and accept that she's totally unfit for the job?
Well, I refer the honourable gentleman to my letter that I sent today, in which I've been very fulsome in the details of the circumstances of the 19th of October. I've apologised for the error, taken responsibility, and that's why I resigned. What I would say is that I haven't ignored or dismissed any legal advice that I have been provided with. I can't go into the details of that legal advice because the Law Officers Convention. That is part of the decision-making process that all ministers go through. We have to take into account our legal duties, not to leave people destitute. I have to take into account the fact that I don't want to release prematurely hundreds of migrants into the Kent community. I have to take into account the value for money. I have to take into account the fairness for the British taxpayer.
Richard Drax.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome my right honourable friend to her place and thank her for all the courageous effort she's making in dealing with a very difficult problem that the opposition benches, their answer is let them all in. Yes. That is totally unacceptable. Can I ask my honourable friend, one solution surely would be to return these illegal refugees to countries from whence they came, if indeed it's possible, like, for example, Albania. With how many countries is she negotiating to do this, and has she succeeded in any of those negotiations?
Secretary.
Well, you're right. I mean, effectively, the Labour Party don't have any solutions for this problem, so they'd rather spend airtime on a distraction. That's what this is all about. But what I want to say to my honourable friend is that, yes, we are having some success with returning people more swiftly to Albania. It's early days, and I don't want to overplay it because it's still very, very difficult legally. But those agreements with those safe countries are absolutely vital to ensure that people who are coming from safe countries, not from persecution, not fleeing war, can be legitimately returned because they are not here for asylum.
Drew Hendry.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, as Home Secretary responsible for national security, if she is made aware of a government employee, a civil servant, who, despite apologies, is sacked for sharing government material several times on private email or device, would she sanction that employee being re-employed?
As I've made clear, I'm very willing to apologise for mistakes that I have made, but what I'm not willing to do is to apologise for things I haven't done. So, as I said, it's not right that there's been a breach of national security. It's not right that there was a document about security matters, intelligence agencies or law enforcement. Those are simply not true.
Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In the words of the Home Secretary, the asylum system is broken. 12 years of Tory government and the asylum system is broken. Now, if she says we've got no solutions, the Home Secretary can press upon the Prime Minister to call a general election and let the electorate decide who they trust more. The recent revelations of conditions...
Order, resume your seat for 1 second. Please, can all members now, you can see what time it is, and we've got 5 hours of business ahead of us, plus votes. Questions, please, not statements. Question, please, Mr. Ali.
The recent revelations of conditions at Manston Processing Centre highlight the complete and utter failure of leadership at the Home Office. Will the Home Secretary do the decent thing once again, where she did it on the 19th of October, and resign from that position because of the conditions at Manston?
Great.
Listen, I'm very clear about what this government's priority is. It's about tackling the scourge of illegal migration, taking a firm line and changing the law where our laws are being abused, working collaboratively with the French, ensuring that we are removing people who are not meant to be here, and ensuring that the British people can have confidence in their borders.
Rees Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Many in my constituency are worried about paying their heating bills. Many in my constituency are concerned about getting GP appointments, and many of my hotels are full up with illegal migrants. Does she appreciate the sense of unfairness that my constituents have? And when will legislation be coming forward to resolve this situation?
That's great.
Yes, I do appreciate the seriousness of this issue, and it's been my #1 priority since September. It is unacceptable that we are spending £6 million a day on hotel accommodation for asylum seekers. It is unacceptable that we have 35,000 asylum seekers in hotels distributed around the country. We need to bring that to an end. We need a comprehensive plan of alternative sites. We need to speed up our processing of asylum. We need to remove people from the UK more quickly, and ultimately we need to change our law, and we'll be introducing legislation later this year to ensure that there is no longer any abuse of our laws.
Olivia Blake.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'll refer members to my register of interest for being a member of RAMP. I've been listening very carefully, and I would like to ask again the Home Secretary, how many extra hotel rooms has she personally procured in her position as Home Secretary? And in her letter of resignation, she wrote, pretending we haven't made mistakes, carrying on as everyone can't see that we have made them, and hoping that things will magically come right is not serious politics. Would she agree that she has made yet another mistake, that she should accept responsibility, and that she should resign?
Secretary.
I'm very pleased to repeat for the record that since the 6th of September, under my watch, over 30 new hotels have been agreed. Those would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces to be brought into use.
Mark Jenkinson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister is 6 days into his summer pledge of fixing this crisis within 100 days, so I hope, and my constituents in Workington hope, that my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, is getting the support that she needs around that cabinet table.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is her assessment of those held, among those held, of the scale of abuse of our modern slavery laws?
Listen, I thank my honourable friend for raising this point. Let me just say 2 points. First of all, the Prime Minister is absolutely committed to fixing this problem. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever about his determination to fix this once and for all, and I have huge amounts of confidence in him, and I'm very grateful to him for his support operationally on this. When it comes to modern slavery laws, it's not just people coming here on the boats claiming modern slavery, but what they're doing is that buys them effectively a year, because it takes on average 400 days for a modern slavery claim to be processed, so they know that they will be accommodated in the UK free of charge. But it's even worse than that. We're getting now serious foreign national offenders in this country who have served sometimes several years for sex offences, for drug offences, for serious offences, and when they finish their sentence, the UK authorities want to deport them. What do? They claim to be a victim of modern slavery.
Karen Buck.
Deputy Speaker, it is absolutely essential that the pressures on the Manston Centre are relieved as soon as possible. It is also essential that we do not simply replicate some of those conditions in the concentrations of hotels. I have a ward now where there are so many hotels being commissioned, 2 more this weekend, that the ratio is 800% above Home Office guidelines. The local authority is getting virtually no support in order to manage this, and there is no capacity at all being provided to the Health Service to deal with the very real health issues that need to be dealt with. Will she ensure that Home Office officials meet me immediately to discuss how we ensure that the asylum seekers coming into these hotels, it is properly managed and properly dispersed?
Well, I'm very glad for the Minister of State for Immigration to meet with the Honourable Lady to discuss this issue in detail. What I would say is my review is identifying exactly the process of identification of the hotels around the country. We're seeing a real imbalance in geography and effectively of where the hotels are located. There's a real pressure in certain places, and then other places are not taking people. So I think we need to bring some equivalence to this process. We ultimately need to bring it to an end. We need to make it more cost effective, but ultimately we need to be processing people more quickly.
Mark Olongi.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. We have heard yet again today that members opposite want to prioritise the welfare of illegal immigrants. My priority, and I believe the priority of the people on this side of the House, should be to those of our constituents who are desperate for social housing, those constituents who are sofa surfing, many of them women and children. Is it an outrage Home Secretary, that we are spending £2.5 billion a year when we'll be soon asking these very same people to share the burden of further cuts to public services?
Well, my honourable friend raises a really important point. The facts of the matter are we are receiving an unprecedented amount of people coming into this country, many of whom are coming illegally. They require accommodation. That is putting excess pressure on our current housing stock, whether that's hotels or the private rented market or other beds in other sorts of buildings. Ultimately, we don't have enough space for these people, and we need to find it quickly. It's very difficult. It will be done, but it will take time.
I'm trying to get everybody in, but you're going to have to help me. So please focus on the question rather than a long preface. Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her endeavours for a truly difficult and complex situation. Can I also ask the Home Secretary, will she outline what steps are in place to ensure that asylum centres are able to provide a basic standard of mental health care for those affected by the disgraceful action at the weekend? And can the Home Secretary ensure that asylum seekers are safe whilst waiting for the determination of their applications, as is the law in this great nation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Thank you.
Great.
Well, of course, as I say, and I'll reiterate it again and again, I'm very grateful for the brilliant response from the emergency services and the authorities and everybody at the Western Jetfoil and Manston yesterday, and actually subsequently dealing with this incident. And we are making sure that they are well supported. We will need more staff because of the increased numbers. I'm not going to mislead you on that, but we are trying to make arrangements to ensure that they are supported so that they are not overburdened.
Scott Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. May I welcome the Home Secretary back to her rightful place on the front bench. She has the support of the millions of Britons who are hoping, just hoping that one day we may finally get a grip of the small boats crisis. The Home Affairs Committee has been told that between 1 to 2% of the entire male population of Albania, that's 10,000 men, have arrived in the UK in the past year. Why on earth are we accepting asylum claims from Albania when countries such as Germany and Sweden do not?
Great.
Well, we have to ensure that our asylum laws are fit for purpose, and there has been some great achievements secured by the passage of the Nationality and Borders Act, and they're going to be operationalised in due course. But he's right, we need to change our laws to ensure that people are not abusing our legal frameworks.
Nadia Whittam.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, in a horrifying attack, a man threw petrol bombs at Toghaven Immigration Centre in Dover. Does the Home Secretary consider this an act of terrorism? If not, why not? And will she unequivocally condemn all those who promote hatred towards migrants?
Well, of course. I mean, I'm not going to comment on the particular details of this case. It's a very, very sad case. It's a very worrying case. I am very, very concerned about the safety and the security of the site at Western Jetfoil and of Manston. We've evacuated the people from from Western Jetfoil to Manston, and now they are back to Western Jetfoil. There's been a huge amount of effort by the authorities, and I'm very grateful to them.
Thank you, Mr.
Speaker. Would the Home Secretary agree that anyone listening to this debate could only conclude that the opposition benches are more interested in illegal economic migrants than law-abiding British people?
Great.
Well, one of the promises in the 2019 manifesto, as my honourable friend will know, was to reduce overall numbers when it came to migration, and also to fix the problem of illegal migration. And I know, my friend, that we both campaigned to leave the European Union. 17 million people voted for control over their borders. That is what this government will deliver.
Winter.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Refugee Council has demanded a task force to clear the 120,000 backlog of asylum seekers, most of whom are living in absolutely appalling, overcrowded, unsafe, inhumane circumstances, and it is costing for those in hotels about 5.6 million in their own admission. They also called for the government to convene a summit of refugees and migration experts, local authorities, housing providers to examine options for short and long-term suitable accommodation for people seeking asylum. Will she do this?
Well, as I've said, I'm very concerned about how we accommodate people who are waiting for their asylum claims to be processed. We need to bear down on that backlog so they're not waiting for so long and they can get a decision, whether that be to remove them or for them to be here on a legal basis. We need to ensure that the accommodation is cost-effective, lawful and reasonable.
Tom Hunt.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I make no apology for prioritising the welfare of my constituents who sent me here. I do not wake up in the day worrying about welfare of people who have illegally entered our country and so in scant regard for our laws. So these reasons why I'm so concerned about the North Hotel. Will the Home Secretary agree with me, though, that it is bad? We shouldn't have illegal immigrants in hotels, but ultimately this will not be nipped in the bud unless we get fully behind Rwanda and look at the definition of a refugee, because we know so many people who get refugee status are not refugees, they are economic migrants and they should be sent back.
Well, I think my honourable friend is right. We need to call out the misrepresentation of this problem. It is not the case that these are all refugees fleeing persecution, war-torn countries or conflict or human rights violations. Many of the people here are arriving here on small boats are actively and willingly procuring those journeys. They are often paying tens of thousands of pounds for those journeys. They are coming here knowingly and willingly, and they are coming here for economic reasons.
Kate Green.
Can the Home Secretary tell us how many, if any, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children have been accommodated in Manston or Western Jetfoil, and what arrangements she is making to keep them in safety in hotels, properly supervised and safeguarded?
Secretary.
Well, as far as I'm aware, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are not routinely detained at Manston. However, what I will say is that there were a number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who were accommodated, not detained, for a brief period this summer while accommodation was being identified. And of course, overnight, people have been evacuated to Manston yesterday from the Western Jetfoil, and that will have included some children.
Jim Sunderland.
Mr Deputy Speaker, thank you. The issues we've been discussing in the House this afternoon are symptomatic in the main of illegal immigration. Could I please first of all commend the Home Secretary for her stated intent to deal resolutely with the small boats crisis? And secondly, can I please ask her exactly what we might expect for primary legislation needed and also when?
Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his observations, and ultimately he's right. We need to be straight with people. There's an influx of people, there's an unprecedented number of people coming to this country. They are claiming to be modern slaves, they are claiming asylum illegitimately, and they are effectively economic migrants. They're not coming here for humanitarian purposes. We therefore do need to change our laws. We need to ensure that there is a limitation on that ability to abuse our asylum laws. We need to ensure that our modern slavery laws are fit for purpose and cannot be exploited by illegitimate claimants.
Just to remind the Home Secretary to face the microphone, because I can't quite hear everything that's been said, and Hansard may have difficulties as well. Alex Sobel.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the Home Secretary letter today outlined 6 breaches where she used a personal device to send
it's there in black and white.
to send official emails using a personal Gmail address. When I receive emails from a Gmail, I assume they're personal emails. What assurances can she give the House that none of those emails were forwarded on to third parties, and what investigation has been made that those personal Gmail emails were not hacked by any foreign powers?
Secretary.
I have answered this question, but for repetition's sake, I will say that I have set out all the details in the letter of the 19th of October. None of those emails were forwarded on to anybody else. I'm here to focus on the task in hand, which is the situation at Manston, how we're going to bear down on our asylum backlog, and I would have thought his constituents would be more interested in that too, actually.
Ben Bradley.
Deputy Speaker, can I first welcome my right friend, the Home Secretary's robust approach to this issue, which is a matter of fairness that is hugely important to my constituents. Increasingly, Mr Deputy Speaker, young men are arriving in the UK and then later claiming to be unaccompanied children. At that point, the local authority has to treat them as looked after children, and then claiming to be 17, we then have to look after them until they are 25 years old. The average cost of a looked after child is over £100,000 a year. I think my constituents will be horrified to learn that their council tax is being spent on that when it's intended for public services. So can my right honourable friend commit to looking at these rules and making sure that these extortionate costs that are hammering funds intended to support my constituents with public services can be changed? Does she agree that it will be impossible for the public to trust that our immigration policies are properly robust and fair for as long as people can arrive here illegally from a safe country and be able to stay here at the expense of UK taxpayers?
Well, my honourable friend hits on a really important aspect of this problem, which is people who are coming here and claiming to be children. And we've really seen this trend over several years. What I would just say about Albania is we're getting, as I said, many Albanian people come here. The majority of them are adult single males. They are not by majority women or children or elderly people. And this claim of being a child is something that we are going to clamp down on. And in the new year, we will be delivering more robust age assessment procedures so that there will be less abuse of this very problem.
Steve McCabe.
When the Home Secretary said that Indian migrants represented the largest number of visa overstayers in this country, was that based on a Home Office briefing, and would she consider putting some details in the library so we can all see the extent of the problem to which she was referring?
Great.
What I'm keen to do is ensure that we honour our manifesto commitment, which is to bring overall migration figures down and clamp down on the scourge of illegal migration. I'm very keen to support the government, and I see my honourable friend here, who's a trade minister, in the negotiations on a historic deal with India. Great friends, great allies, with whom a great partnership can be forged.
Brendan Clark-Smith.
Speaker, does my right honourable friend agree with me that those who campaign to take foreign criminals off flights, those who obstruct us from implementing our Rwanda scheme, and those who continue to encourage the shameful behaviour of so-called charities and activist lawyers have done nothing but contribute to this criminal activity and a system now bursting at the seams?
Well, my honourable friend again raises a really important point. Again, what we've seen, and I speak to our heroic border force officials on a regular basis, and they tell me about their first-hand experience. And what they have seen is repeated and vexatious claims. They see people arriving, they're not making a claim, and then they might see a lawyer, and then they suddenly come up with a claim after they've seen their lawyer. They make repeated and late claims as well, because they know that that's how to game the system. I think there are real concerns about the practice of some lawyers, not all lawyers, but some lawyers, and I encourage the authorities to take action.
Chris Stevens.
Mr Deputy Speaker, so is the Home Secretary then acknowledging that there are human beings at the Manston Centre who are being unlawfully detained for long periods, and if so, what assessment has her department provided to her on the prospects of someone issuing a legal challenge against her department for this unlawful detention?
Great.
Well, I'm very clear that we have too many people at Manston as of today, as we have done for some time now, and that's why we're taking urgent steps to remedy the problem.
Aaron Bell.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary is absolutely right that we need to break the model of the business model of the people smugglers. We need to stop the boats. Would she agree with me that the opposition's suggestion of enhancing safe and legal routes is a mirage? Because no matter how many you expand them, unless you expand them to unlimited amounts, there will still be people willing to take the journey. So the only way we can stop this is by making sure people who do take that illegal route don't get to stay in this country.
Secretary.
We have already several safe and legal routes through which people who are genuine asylum seekers can make their application. And I'm very proud, as I've set out already, of our record of welcoming people who are genuinely fleeing persecution and war and conflict and human rights violations. However, we cannot accept the situation where people are bypassing those routes, jumping the queue effectively on illegitimate bases and making fabricated claims of being victims.
Sure, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary blamed her predecessor for the crisis that she's inherited twice. And indeed, the Home Office's own impact assessment of the Nationality and Borders Bill said it risked leading more people to taking desperate routes to the UK, as we've seen. So why is she doubling down on the same approach? I have many constituents who've been waiting years for asylum decisions. What is her target for processing claims? When will she clear the backlog? And does she agree that costs to the taxpayer would be reduced by granting the right to work to those whose claims have not been processed within 6 months, as is supported on both sides of the House and overwhelmingly by the public?
Secretary.
Well, I have to disagree with him in his characterisation of what I've just said. I don't criticise my predecessor, the right honourable member for my right honourable friend, the member for Witham. She achieved a huge amount during her time as Home Secretary, passing the Nationality and Borders Act, which will take a massive step forward in dealing with problems, something he voted against. She secured the Rwanda Agreement, a landmark partnership with our friends in Rwanda to tackle for the first time and head on this problem. No, I'm very grateful for her work and her contribution.
Danny Kruger.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. And of course we have moral obligations to asylum seekers. And it may well be the case that conditions at Manston are unacceptable. But what is totally unacceptable is the fact that every month thousands of young men arrive in this country from a safe third country, many of whom in fact set off from a safe third country in the form of Albania. 40,000 in this year alone. It's half the size of the British Army. I know that my right honourable friend shares the dismay that is felt on these benches at this situation, unlike the benches opposite, who seem from their questions today only concerned to advocate an open border policy and to take potshots at a minister who uniquely is actually committed.
Please, Mr Kruger, question.
The question is that will she assure the House that she will not be deflected from her strategy of deterring the illegal migration that we are seeing?
What a great question from my honourable friend. Thank you very much. He is absolutely right. And what's more that we are identifying with these, particularly the young single men who are coming from Albania, is that they are either part of organised criminal gangs and procuring their journey through those nefarious means, or they are coming here and partaking in criminal activity, particularly related to drugs, supply and otherwise. In fact, a few weeks ago, I attended a raid with the National Crime Agency where they arrested a suspected Albanian people smuggler in Banbury. So this is a criminal problem. There are many people coming here with criminal intent and behaving in a criminal way. We need to stop it.
Harry.
Mr Deputy Speaker, at the recent Conservative Party conference, the Home Secretary talked that was her dream, indeed her obsession, to see pictures of planes taking off for Rwanda on the front page of the Telegraph. Had to be the Telegraph, of course. Yeah. Does she appreciate how offensive, indeed disturbing and anti-humanitarian that statement is? Yeah. Particularly whenever you bear in mind the true perspective that there are over 80 million refugees and internally displaced people in the world. The UK takes proportionally less refugees than many other European countries, and the Home Office's own figures that from this year say that over 70% of asylum claims are successful, which belies all this propaganda that these are economic migrants.
Secretary.
I'll tell the honourable gentleman what I find offensive and disturbing, and it's this. It's the sight of thousands of people coming to these shores illegally, without a valid asylum claim, taking advantage of our generosity, abusing our laws, being accommodated free of charge. It's unfair, it's unacceptable, and it's not right.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. So far this year, 12,000 Albanians have entered the United Kingdom through small boat crossings of the Channel. 10,000 of those are adult single males. As Commander Dan Omani told the Home Affairs Select Committee, the main driver of that activity is the strength of organised Albanian criminal gangs in the north of France and the transfer of that behaviour to the United Kingdom, together with the determination for people to work on the black market. There is no reason for these people to be here. We should follow the route of other European countries and ensure that they are returned immediately to Albania. Could I therefore ask what discussions my right honourable friend has had with her Albanian counterpart to address this very important issue?
Well, I couldn't agree with my honourable friend more. He identifies exactly the problem that we're dealing with, and it needs a multifaceted approach, deploying and operationalising our returns agreement that we have with Albania, and ensuring that we take robust action against many people who are coming here from Albania with illegitimate aims.
Ms. Lauder. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary is a security risk. She says more than once in her letter to my honourable friend, the Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, that the 19th of October was the only time she used her personal email to send Home Office documents to people outside government. Does that include other non-secure networks like messaging services? Does it include any insecure communication inside government? And does it include the time she spent in other departments, especially her tenure as Attorney General, which lasted over a year, compared with the few chaotic weeks she's been Home Secretary?
Well, I refer the honourable gentleman to my letter that I sent today. That sets out all of the details about the actions, the decisions and the rationale behind the events of the 19th of October. I've apologised for the mistake, I've taken responsibility, and that's why I resigned. But what this is all about is that the honourable gentleman's party really has no solution to the problem that we're dealing with. If Labour were in charge, they would be allowing all the Albanian criminals to come to this country. They would be allowing all the small boats to come to the UK. They would open our borders and totally undermine the trust of the British people in controlling our sovereignty.
Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can the Home Secretary tell me how many places and alternative accommodation did she approve during the month of September? When was the first of those places signed off? When was the first person able to be housed in that accommodation signed off? And if she doesn't have those figures to hand, would she agree to write to me with it at the earliest opportunity?
I won't bore the Chamber with repeating the answer to that question that I've been asked on several occasions now. He will be able to check the record for the specific figures of the number of hotels procured during my tenure and the number of beds. And I'm very glad that we've taken urgent action to deal with this issue.
One moment. I'd like to thank the Home Secretary for her statement and answering questions for 18 minutes short of 2 hours. Point of order, Lisa Nandy.
Point of order, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In July, the Prime Minister was recorded saying that as Chancellor he had changed funding formulas to benefit better off communities at the expense of deprived parts of the country. On Sunday, the Right Honourable Member for Surrey Heath told Sky News this was a direct response to a question to someone from Thanet, one of the most deprived parts of the South East. It has since become clear that this is not the case. A video emerged yesterday showing that the questioner was a councillor for Tunbridge Wells and did not once mention Thanet, as the Secretary of State claimed. So far, nobody in government has come to this House to clarify which funding formulas were changed, with which justification, on whose authority, and why the only explanation offered by any member of this government has now turned out to be false. Could I seek your advice on whether you've had notice from either the Secretary of State or the Prime Minister of their intention to make a statement to this House? And if not, can you advise the House on how to pursue this very serious matter on behalf of communities across the country who have been deprived of funding?
I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for giving me advance notice of a point of order. I've had no indication of any such statement, and the front bench will have heard the comments that she has made today. Of course, comments made outside the House are not a matter for the Chair. She is, of course, free to pursue this matter through other means, and I'm sure she will. Point of order, Alice Cunningham.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be aware of the tragedy off the Teesside, County Durham and North Yorkshire coast, where crustaceans and other wildlife have been decimated and washed up on our beaches. Even today, more dead creatures are being washed up, and according to the government itself, there is no definitive cause of this devastation, which is effectively killing our sea and polluting our beaches. Last week, the EFRA Select Committee met to take evidence from both the government and from eminent university scientists. DEFRA say it may have been an algae bloom, whilst the scientists believe it to be pollution likely linked to dredging of the River Tees. Given this, Mr Deputy Speaker, I wondered if you're aware of any planned statement from DEFRA ministers, and if not, can you guide me as to how I may secure one? Thank you.
I'm grateful to the honourable member for the advance notice of his point of order. I can confirm that I've not had any notice that there's going to be any statements made tonight, but of course if that changes, members will be notified in the usual manner. Ministers again will have heard the point that he has raised, and I'm sure the honourable gentleman will pursue the matter, and the clerks in the table office are available to offer him advice about how he might do so. Further to that point.
At that select committee, Dr Gary Caldwell, marine scientist at Newcastle University, said that expressed his concerns that there was a causal link between the mastios and pyridine, and that's been shared by 3 government scientists from different agencies who have written to him, say they want the data, and they think the capital dredging should be paused whilst further investigations are carried out. So I seek your guidance, Mr Speaker, about how we might secure sight of those letters from the scientists with an explanation from DEFRA ministers as to why in those circumstances capital dredging is justified without further investigation.
So I've got nothing to add to the response that I gave to Mr Cunningham, but I'm absolutely certain that if he pursues the matter through the clerks at the table office, that then he will be able to continue with pursuing this particular matter. We're now going to go on to the 4 minutes to 7, the business of the day. So, programme motion, Minister to move.
Mr Speaker, I beg to move the bill in money.
The question is the Genetic Technology Precision Breeding Bill Programme number 2 motion as on the order paper. So the question is, as on the order papers, may I say aye? Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.